It is your prisonplanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here on this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this Friday edition of the Worldwide Broadcast. I'm still coming to you from deep in the heart of Arkansas, here in Hot Springs, Arkansas, but I will be back Sunday for sure. I've extended my stay here. I will be back Sunday in studio there at the Infowars Center in Austin, Texas. And David Knight will be riding shotgun here on the broadcast with us. Here today, going over a lot of different important news stories and information. Obviously, we also have just a ton of really important news just now breaking at Infowars.com. As we told you, in fact, I need to tell the crew, will you guys pull up Rahm Emanuel says put gun owners or have a no-gun buy list, or take guns of people on no-fly list. It's about a 2-minute video. We've played it quite a bit over the years. Well, now Democrats are moving to exploit terror watch list in new attack on Second Amendment. It's extrajudicial. They just put you on it. No one knows how you get on it. And then you can't get off it unless you do what they say. We've seen a lot of cases where the FBI goes to highly decorated Marines and people with no criminal records and says, we notice your business is one, we've had these people on as guests, where you fly as a salesman. You're on a no-fly list until you become an infiltrator for us of different groups. It's like Randy Weaver there at Ruby Ridge. They said, oh, you're a former Green Beret. You're going to infiltrate white supremacist groups for us in the area, or we're going to throw your butt in jail. We'll trump something up. And that's how this works in this mafia culture of complete and total fear. And I'm not afraid. All the intimidation, all the threats, all the dirty tricks just confirms how criminal this out-of-control system is and that it needs to be resisted. And something's happened with the establishment. They have figured out something that's already been going on the last few years and intensifying. This broadcast, in one way or another, a conservative number is 15 million people a week. Folks, we've got 10 million viewers conservatively on YouTube a week. The radio is more like 10 million. You add everything together, that's a very low number, an old number to say 15 million. Most weeks now it's about 20, 25 million. Some weeks 30, 40, 50, 60 million people. And it's just spreading and spreading and spreading. And if the government's scared and the globalists are scared and freaked out, I'm not so much scared. I am freaked out because I never knew I would get into this position. I was simply trying to get other people awake, and I would always say I'm looking for leaders to fight the New World Order. I'm looking to get citizen journalists to take action. I image in my mind millions of people doing little things bringing down the New World Order, and that is happening. But this rising tide, I'm the ship on the highest wave, man, it's like on an elevator in a 100-story building that's just shooting up, that feeling in your stomach, and the fear in the establishment. The fear in the writers they send to interview me, the people coming up to me on the street that are listeners with their hands shaking to meet me, and I'm just a regular guy who analyzed the globalist tone admissions, and I tell you, I've got to have a conversation with everybody on air and off air about what do we do now that we are accruing a level of power that actually frightens the establishment. And then how do we deal with all the attacks, really the desperate flailing attacks, and what does that signify? Well, it signifies that they're just men as well, just like we are. And that when people learn that we can have victory against the globalist, no matter how fancy their teleprompter sets are, These people can and will be brought down, and they know that. They know they're just little men behind the curtain. And they're saying pay no attention, and we're saying no, we see you. Welcome, my friends, and thank you for joining us for another edition of the phenomenon worldwide that is Infowars.com, and yours truly, as more and more the figurehead of the anti-globalist movement, yours truly, Alex Jones. And the system sees me as a figurehead and the intellectual leading brain trust against the globalist. The mad prophet of the airwaves, as they call me, kind of Howard Beale Network 2.0, and they are coming after us like rats coming out of the woodwork of a burning building. And I am not the one burning down the New World Order. I am simply warning people that the building is on fire, and the globalists have drunk their own Kool-Aid. They have drunk deeply of their own Kool-Aid, their own poison propaganda. They're smoking their own dope. They're buying into their own garbage, their own con artistry. And they're thinking that I am discrediting them and I'm making the public hate them in all these big national polls. And that's not what's happening. People don't trust the system anymore. It is very elementary. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse as the inequity intensifies and as justice is flushed down the toilet and as television and the movies and the culture sells an idea of the police state being ultra sexy and cool and fun. I mean, if you want to know who the New World Order are, what they stand for, look at what they promote, look at what they push in television and in the culture and in the media. It's anti-family, it's anti-truth, it's anti-honesty, it's anti-beauty. They want you to be malfunctioning and psychologically degenerate so that you cannot differentiate good and bad. That's what they want. And they are militarizing the police everywhere. The military quietly for 40 years has been training the police for a military takeover. The police aren't even told that. They're just incrementally taught a military takeover to where you're basically already living under a slow-motion martial law and don't even know it. In fact, they're going to do a piece tonight where MSNBC has come out and said, they can dig it up, we can play it, but Knight was telling me about it on the nightly news. It's coming up tonight. Why not play it today? David Knight's riding shotgun with us here in case I have any technical difficulties. You can pop in. Plus, it's great to have the news guy, you know, come in once an hour with a bunch of headlines and banter back and forth. He and Jakari and Rob Do and so many others have done a great job here at Infowars News. But, you know, my issue is they've got a mainstream article out today we're going to get to going anti-insurgent tactics taught to the police to be used against the public. But it's to keep you safe from gangs and drugs. Drugs were the excuse to take over China by the West, and they have been used now here. I mean, this is a scientific formulae. This is British imperial technology being deployed by private central banks. And again, it's not the British government doing this. It is that technology that they basically perfected being used now. I mean, here's an example of how the mainstream media operates. They want to say that gun owners, conservatives, libertarians, independent-type people are a threat. Anybody that stores food is a threat because we're people that are self-sufficient. Now, why does that threaten the system? Because they plan, on their own words, via Agenda 21, an incremental design collapse, and then we go into the arms of the central government during that reorganization. There's numbers out today where over 9 million people have gone off of the work rolls, the payrolls, in the last 4 years under Obama. And that number is only going to intensify. They go from 25 million people on food stamps to 49 million people. That's double, right at double. And that's not even counting a lot of supplemental stuff. It's more like 70 million people on some type of food assistance. Is that a free country? No, that is a collectivized country at the grassroots with a private corporate dominant system at the top. But I mean, here's an example of the type of news I've got in front of me, literally by the hundreds today. And this is just the news I'm going to be getting into, and then David Knight will bring in more. Appalling irresponsibility. Senior scientists attack Chinese researchers for creating new strains of influenza virus in veterinary laboratory that are hyper deadly and can jump across species. Now, that's the London Independent reporting on that. Now, I'm going to have Kurt Nimmo post this article, but under it, post the article I had Darren McBreen do last year about deadly bioweapons labs in your neighborhood, and then past articles I did years ago under BioShield, where they've built hundreds of level 4 bioweapons labs. Even mainstream media said, well, they're called defense. That's how they get around the treaties on bioweapons. But really, they create thousands of gallons of liquid death, was the Boston Globe quote a few years ago. And so I've been harping on this, and even the so-called alternative media, who really just feel more powerful if they criticize me and feel like that makes them, you know, more successful. You know, Alex Jones is a fearmonger. He says the #1 threat to humanity, statistically from his research, is thousands of laboratories worldwide, thousands of private ones, not just government, hundreds in the U.S. that are government alone, with stuff like mousepox designed for humans that kills over 90% of the humans that come in contact with it. If they were to release that, oh, and by the way, it's airborne. Oh, and by the way, they're splicing it with airborne, you know, other pathogens and things. And again, whatever you're hearing about is nothing compared to what they've got. And I'm talking about a 12 monkeys. Or is it 13 monkeys? What's the name of that Bruce Willis movie? Yeah, 12 monkeys. I'm talking about that type of scenario here. And then you go look at all the globalists, and they all sit around talking about, on record, how there's too many of us and how they dream of, once the police state's in place, they'll have the released bioweapon release, and then this plague will run, and they'll all go to their bunkers and things and have special forces and people protect the nuclear reactors and stuff, and that's what continuity of government is. And you know, this national defense systems they're setting up to, quote, protect critical infrastructure, is so they can have a release or let a release happen, or if a release happens. Because, by the way, it's probably going to accidentally happen if it doesn't happen on purpose. People can say, oh, they're not going to release that. They didn't say that. Okay, let's just say none of that's true, even though it is. Gives me a headache drawing up all the sources I have that I've given you ad nauseum in films like Endgame and countless articles. But let's just ignore all that. Let's ignore the Moonraker scenario. How long will it take until one of these fission fusion reactors or superconducting supercolliders like Hadron, where they admit, well, statistically it could blow up the Earth, but, you know, it's a very low probability, but we're going to do thousands of tests. So actually it's a high probability. People are like, what, are you anti-science? No, I'm not anti-science. It's like I'm not anti-gun, but I don't think you should give a 3-year-old a gun and not tell them what it is and, you know, let them, you know, go to preschool with it. And humans and the people running things, the globalists themselves have a normalcy bias. And, of course, a normalcy bias is, if you were in Nazi Germany in 1942 and were an SS officer, you were normalized incrementally into thinking, lining up men, you know, naked women with babies in their arms. You can see these photos and films. They shot them, and just mowing them down. Just women with kids. It's the most horrific stuff I've ever seen, because the Nazis were the only ones crazy enough to document it. And, you know, the communists all did stuff like that too. And it's just women. Like, we type into Google women with babies being shot in Nazi Germany, and it's just all these hundreds of women that look like your mother in a thing with toddlers on their, you know, holding them and then being gunned down. And they thought it was normal. And I've used the normalcy bias example about 1,000 times here of the Aztecs. If you teleported back to the Chalupa region of Mexico, right there outside Mexico City, there in that swampland, and where they were doing all the human sacrificing, they're in that growth belt, they're in that agricultural center, and you said, don't kill 10 children every morning to make the sun rise, or when it sunsets, the sun is a ball of gas, they would laugh at you, because it's a normalcy bias. They're normal, you're not. And see, the acclimators admit, the social engineers admit, they're just acclimating us by degree. And if you could take somebody, just like with a poison, like cobra poison, titrating the dose, you can incrementally, slowly sit there and give somebody a tiny bit of cobra poison, and then a little more, a little more, a little more. And pretty soon, after about a year of that, you can give somebody 10, 20, 30 times, depending on the person. There's famous people that would actually let cobras bite them, you know, as part of stage shows, to where they could take many times what would kill a horse. And that's the same thing. And I'm here historically going, hey, we're being acclimated. Here they are admitting it. By the way, the elite are crazy. I mean, do they really think they're going to let some of this bioweapon out and then somehow be safe? The truth is the globalists are in control of everything but themselves. And I've said this 1,000 times. But here's that article, appalling irresponsibility, senior scientists attack Chinese researchers for creating new strains of influenza virus in a veterinary laboratory. That is a hybrid and obviously very deadly and mutated. And then here's our article, Bioweapons Lab in Your Neighborhood, special report, March 10th, 2012, so over a year ago. And I got Darren McBreen to go out and talk to people and warn them about that. And there are also links under it to some of our previous reports, or it should have, I guess it doesn't, dealing with all that type of stuff. So continuing here, let me break some of this down. I mean, here it is, deadly virus missing from Texas weapons lab. Remember that a few weeks ago, back in March? Not last year, but this year. And when you look at that case, people said, well, it's only airborne, with rats. But yeah, but rats can also give it to you. And they believe it's mutating to humans, and it's a very dangerous type of hemorrhagic fever, and people tried to spin that. And go, oh, it's not dangerous. The point is they're messing with level 4 stuff at the UT lab that I've already pointed out is probably a prime place this stuff will end up having a breakdown. Before this even happened, I fingered this lab because it's out on the coast in a level 2 lab just behind swipe card glass doors when the stuff should be in underground bunkers with fire bombs where they hit a button if it releases and the whole place burns down. That's what a level 4 is supposed to have. We'll be right back. Democrats move to exploit terror watch list in new attack on the Second Amendment. Back when Obama said a few weeks ago, he goes, I'll use executive orders and things to get your guns. He told NBC that last night. That's up on Infowars.com as well. I told you this would be the attack pattern. And again, I don't want credit, but we're always being attacked that we're not accurate. So Kurt Nimmo wrote an article about this, a great article, an important article that everybody needs to get out to everyone they know. I'm going to tweet it out right now at the Real Alex Jones, but that Kurt did not point out that we've warned people about. At least I read most of the article here this morning, and yeah, because we don't do that. In fact, my writers tend to be less sensational than reality is. And I'm always telling them, hey, this is worse than what you gave this headline. Well, we just want to try to, not be seen as, being too extreme. Too extreme? They're on MSNBC. We have a video clip up there saying, let's take the guns of people that are on a no-fly list or a watch list. Folks, you can put anybody on one of these lists. This is the essence of authoritarianism, is just say we're taking you away for questioning. Well, that'll never happen. That's crazy. Not in America. And I've been telling you for 5 years this was their plan. Because Emanuel at a Brady Center speech said we're going to get the guns with this if we think you're a possible terrorist. Not you're even under suspicion, but maybe we think you're connected to a terrorist. They can disappear anybody they want, including the dorm chumps of the other patsies, because they obviously knew too much. Because these young men, especially the little brother of the Boston bombing, had been hanging around with them. Hanging around on his thing, going partying. Funded by the CIA to go to Dagestan. But let's just ignore all of that. Having failed miserably to reduce the Second Amendment to an endangered species, the gun grabbers are busily working on a new angle, making sure Americans on government terror watch list cannot purchase firearms. Following the failure of the Manchin-Toomey in the bill in the Senate to attack the Second Amendment, the anti-Second Amendment activist and New York Democrat Representative Carolyn Maloney have led the charge. Appearing on MSNBC earlier in the week, Maloney claimed gun laws would have prevented the Boston terror attack, despite the fact that explosives were used in the attack. And then they go on to say that we need to have people that are on a terror watch list not be able to get a gun. As it stands now, Tamerlan, as we know, was on the terror watch list, so we know a gun check would have stopped him if there was a background check, she said. Maloney went on to say that gun shows are used by terrorists to buy firearms, with no questions asked. And they are promoting and saying they're going to introduce legislation. I saw them saying this weeks ago, but they're now on TV saying it, to put people on terror watch list and show our other media outlets. So they just put you on a list or put you on a mental list. That's what they've also been calling for, is just, we're just going to put you on a list saying we think you're mentally ill because a psychologist, talked to you, no judge, no jury, and now you can't own guns, just like the Soviet Union did. Here's a clip of a manual 5 years ago at the Brady Center calling for this.
And I think the most simple thing we can do, and we've got to make this a #1 issue as a test vote and then take it into the election, that is, if you are on the no-fly list because you are known as maybe a possible terrorist, you cannot buy a handgun in America. And I am not one far from liking the mixing of politics and policy, but as my old boss used to say, give me that vote and throw me into that briar patch. I'll make politics out of that every day, because if it's between that terrorist list and the NRA, I know where America is going to be every time.
Yeah.
And they're going to make the right choice. And we have
so there
got
you
to
go.
start building on that.
And so the conversion has always been Al-Qaeda's the threat, give up your rights because of them, and then, oh, by the way, now gun owners, libertarians, returning veterans, you are the #1 terrorist. And that's why the military is awake. The reason the establishment hates our guts is we simply go watch the Brady Center and the CFR and the Bilderberg Group and the Davos events. We actually watch them and then come back and report what they say they're going to do and what they've done in other countries that they've already got deeper down their rat hole. And, I mean, the globalists, when they fully get control of a country, they'll put fascist or communist in and just start killing everybody because they're eugenicists. And so people say, well, you'll never stop them. Well, you know what? I'm going to slow them down as much as I can. And we have slowed them down a lot. And they're getting very scared. Look, they've known that we've been reaching, let's be conservative, 10 years ago, 5 million people a week. 5 years ago, 10 million people a week. A couple years ago, 15 million people a week. The numbers are now 20, 25 million a week. And a lot of them are new people. And it's global, too. I don't care about making money off somebody. I need money as simple fuel, like Energon cubes. To fund our operation. But I don't bow down to it. I don't, my bling. People go, why don't you wear a wedding ring? Because I don't like how it looks and I don't like how it feels, and I guess I should. Why don't I wear, and people, I've had family give me nice watches, and I wear it for like a week and then just can't wear it anymore because it's not who I am. I need to wear sports jackets. I need to land at events in helicopters. Because that's what would actually wake up the sheeple. If I, charged $500 to come hear me speak, which I could do, and then bought a private jet like Glenn Beck. I mean, I'm not knocking him for doing that. It's just that it seems obscene, so I don't do it. But then I'm like, well, wait, make all that money and really go after the New World Order. But it just, again, what I'm getting at here is I really want justice and truth, and I don't claim to have all the answers, but we have shook up the establishment. I mean, let's not exaggerate. 15, 20 articles today, vicious stuff going on. They've got investigators trying to dig through everything I do. They've got government people harassing us. I don't even get into it on air. But dirty tricks, paranoia campaigns, it doesn't work on me. Because I already know you're criminals. It's not like, oh, you scare me now. You're threatening me. Oh, my gosh, I better shut up. I mean, I've been doing this 18 years. And when you act like criminals and do all this stuff to us behind the scenes, it only reaffirms what's happening. And I was telling a Esquire big reporter, I didn't realize, I saw a few of his articles that were somewhat nice to Ron Paul and others, and I didn't realize that he did the definitive Charlton Heston interview before he died. He did, I mean, I'm not exaggerating, it's like 100. He interviews everybody. This is John Richardson, whose dad was a famous CIA guy that carried out the assassination of the South Vietnamese president and all this stuff. And guys, comes off as real nice, but it's Creepville, definitely, to have this guy around. He's there trying to convince me that the New World Order, isn't really bad and all the rest of this stuff. And he wrote My Father the Spy about his dad, a famous CIA, director of stuff in Vietnam, of covert operations and a bunch of things. And he's been interviewed by Cy Hirsch and the whole 9 yards. But you're sitting there talking to this guy, and I'm telling him, I'm like, well, you know, my wife has gotten calls where they're listening to her talk to somebody, and they call and say, by the way, we're listening to you and just heard that. We're the government. And he just couldn't even believe it. And I'm like, come on. You know, you've done all these interviews. You've been around. And he goes, well, I've gotten stuff when I did stuff on the Scientologists, you know. I've gotten calls, like women calling up, trying to act like they're my girlfriend. I go, yeah, we've got those too. No, this is a whole nother level where people are calling your kids up and stuff. And, you know, it's just, it's like dark side, light side. Because, you know, he said his dad felt bad about killing his friend, the South Vietnamese president. And he was against killing him, but the CIA, you know, bosses told him he had to help carry it out. So, you know, my dad didn't like the torture and stuff that was going on. So the New World Order doesn't like it today. I mean, this is like, you know, in the early 1960s, this stuff is going on. And it's just this naivete of even insiders are like, well, globalism is to redistribute and help the poor. No, it's not. It's to get rid of any uppity people who aren't part of the establishment and create a new dark age. That's what they plan. And I want to get into a bunch of other news. Next hour, I'll take your calls. John Bound has gotten the man that shot the video. And it's up at Infowars.com. Man drinking iced tea in parking lot gets arrested. And we've now had the Fayetteville police just called us about our article to explain that that was a state liquor enforcement agent and not them. So, well, the local news reported it was the Fayetteville police, but we will look into it and add that update. It's not really a correction to the article, but imagine if somebody just shows up and says, up against the car, going to jail, and the guy's like, this is an iced tea, man. It won't matter. He'll go to jail. The jury will probably give the guy life in prison or something for an iced tea. I mean, this is the type of stuff I'm talking about. It's just crazy. But the Austin police said you can't hand out your magazine in Austin anywhere. And I go, where's the law? Well, the code enforcers say it's right-of-way advertising. I go, and I went and looked up that law, and I went, that's a billboard law, bud. And they go, I know, and I listen to your show, and I don't like doing this, but I'm going to get in big trouble. I said, well, you better say no. And they didn't say no. They wrote the tickets. I mean, what a country. And then they backed off the tickets and said, well, just disregard those now. And yeah, you're right. Hey, I talked about this yesterday. It's the compartmentalization of, if I can't hand out magazines in America, cops, you don't have a future either. If you can't walk out of a store drinking an iced tea, guy walks out, pops it, gassing his car up, cop comes over, liquor cop, and says, you're drinking. And the guy goes, man, this is an iced tea. And the guy's looking at him like he's crazy because that iced tea that he talks about is well known. It's sold everywhere. We've got the listing of it. Arizona tea. Arnold Palmer, yeah. Iced tea and lemonade. Yeah, it's an Arnold Palmer. Arizona teas. And they arrest him. And let me tell you, they'll send him to jail. I mean, I've seen juries send people to jail for pocket constitutions because it's about worshiping the out-of-control authority. And if you worship at that dark altar, folks, you have no future. So, shifting gears, I want to go to David Knight and get his take on what I was just mentioning. But before we do that, David, do we have the new magazine in there in studio so TV viewers can see it?
Yes, we do.
The May issue is out, and it will sell out quickly. There's only 110 or 20, I forget how many they printed. No, it's over 100,000 copies. It will sell out. It is at cost in groups of 10 up to 100. 3 bumper stickers per magazine. We're going to put 20,000 in San Antonio and 60,000, they're now going on the streets today in Austin. Get them and put them on your own property and give them to people that want to put them on their property. This is going to explode across the country. This is going to explode. Most of them will go in Central Texas, but the 20 or 30,000 we usually sell to everybody or that go out in subscriptions, you can put them up in your area. Another devastating victory. Now, this is successful. I may start doing it every few months if I get the money to do it. It costs about $40,000 total to have them printed and then put in and everything. And we'll put millions of them across America. Infowars.com, Save the Constitution. The other's Infowars.com. At least that's what I told them to do. Is that what it says? David, I'm not back to see it yet.
Yeah, it's this is the history of false flags, and it's a great issue. They've even got on the cover here, they've got a jogger with 666 Boylston Street on his chest, which is, you know, where the finish line for the Boston Marathon
and a skull face. Yeah,
and a skull
that's
face,
mine.
yeah. And inside we've got a lot of information about the history of false flags, and that's really key because people have to understand and get the message out to people exactly what a false flag is. That word started trending after Dan brought it up at the press conference. But people have to understand how the government has done this over and over again, and we've got to stop that tool. We've got to take that tool out of their toolkit, the way they manipulate people. And, you know, that could save lives if we could stop this kind of attack that we see over and over again. And then it's got a lot of bumper stickers in here. We got 3 bumper stickers that are in here.
Absolutely. In fact, I just pulled it up on InfoWarsStore.com, and it's a double cover. One cover has the American flag being painted on the front, and on the back is another cover. I'm sorry, somebody just popped in my ear. What did you say?
Yeah, here we are. Yeah, this is the back.
Okay, great, fantastic. Yeah. And then so it's a special issue double cover, 3 free bumper stickers. I mean, these aren't like little paper stickers. These are high quality, you know, petroleum based stickers that last for years. And conservatively, these will be seen thousands of times apiece. Some estimates are 20,000 times in a major metropolitan city like New York, and in a year or in their life. And so we're talking about tens of millions of people seeing Infowars.com. One says save the Constitution, Infowars.com. The other says Infowars.com. The other says PrisonPlanet.com. Hit them and hit them hard, ladies and gentlemen. This is the new edition of the magazine. We actually lose money on this with the bumper stickers big time. I don't care. It's an Infowar weapon. And that's why you need to buy at the Seed Center. We've got the biggest selection out there I've seen online, and we're adding more every week, of the best non-GMO, non-hybrid, open pollinated. Means they create, you know, more seeds afterwards. Bugs are what pollinate it for you. Huge varieties from fruit tree packages to, you know, just to vegetables to everything. Some seed packs have 50,000 seeds. Some have 5,000 seeds. Some have 20,000 seeds. It's all there. InfoWarsStore.com. Start planting the seeds in your area. Get gardens going. Get into eating healthy non-GMO food. Plant little secret gardens in green belts and areas and little meadows, and then harvest it there, and then let the cops try to come after you for that. You know, they're so obsessed with marijuana being grown. They do not want you doing this. They want you going in and buying GMO to sterilize you and your family. Buy the ProPure water filters with 10% off, promo code WATER, the best gravity-fed filters out there. Get PrisonPlanet.tv memberships, and the capital we get will continue the operation, which is a big nut to crack, $6+ million a year. Most media people that come down are blown away by that. It would cost $50 million for most people to do what we're doing. We're in Texas that has a lot lower living costs, so that's how we're able to do it. But the point is, buy books, videos, T-shirts. They all get the word out. They all educate you to a higher level. They all wake others up. You can pay it forward and pass it on. Buy from the good guys. InfoWarsStore.com or 888-253-3139. 888-253-3139. But if you live in Central Texas, we're putting 60,000 in Austin, 20,000 in San Antonio, and I don't want just regular sheeple to be the only ones that pick this up and do nothing with the stickers. I want this to be a special issue where you go pick up 10 or 15 and give them to friends and family that are listeners so that most of the stickers get put up. And it will absolutely light up Central Texas. Next time, I'll probably have it where I buy like 100,000 extra magazines that are just for sale to listeners at cost, and then put them out on the streets of Austin that don't have the bumper stickers because it costs so much. And then, you know, just send them out to listeners that have bumper stickers. But we're doing this. It's a very aggressive operation, InfoWarsStore.com. And please don't forget to support our local AM and FM affiliates by supporting their local sponsors or becoming a sponsor as well. We're gaining a lot of new affiliates, but it's important to spread the word about the show and to become a sponsor of the local affiliate as well. Now, going back to David Knight. David, I mean, I've known this. I've had this understanding many times, but it really hit me like a ton of bricks this morning. They are so scared of what happened with Dan Bidandi because if citizen journalists start their own website or work for a news site like Infowars.com or work for a local radio station, a lot of stations are begging for help. You can go and say, hey, I'd like to be a reporter for you. You know, look at my YouTube channel where I've done my own reporting. Show you're a reporter. That's how this starts. I went and got an access show. 6 months later, had a weekend show. 6 months later, had a weekday show. 6 months later, had a syndicated show. Just because I did it. So much of it's getting in the arena, taking those first steps. That's how the journey of 1,000 miles starts, the old Chinese proverb, with a single step. Do your YouTube channel. Show you can do news. Even if you're not really good at it, you'll get better. Then go say, I want to be a local a reporter for you. I'll sweep up. I'll do whatever you need. And if you have action and don't just sit around like a normal intern going, My parents are paying for my college education, and I'm an intern here. The internship's to watch and see if there's anybody with a brain out there. Intern for liberty, go work at a station, whatever, then suddenly go ask real questions at a news conference, and you'll be all over the national news. They're so scared. That's why they said, because of Drudge Report, they don't do many press conferences anymore, the White House, and because of Drudge Report, they don't let even deputy secretaries of states and people talk. Because they'll be honest. Yeah, we're going to bring in communism and take your guns. And people are like, whoa, really, you are? Yeah, I love Mao Zedong. We're going to create a communist America. Whoa, don't talk anymore. They go, look at the kook Jones and Drudge and scum. They're covering news stuff and nothing worse than them. They are so scared of this, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what's happening. And if we can get, it's just hard to hire reporters than get them trained, even though they're great people. David Knight, Jakari Jackson have just excelled. Darren McBreen, Rob Jacobson, Marcos Morales, Don Salazar, Kurt Nimmo, and just Leanne McAdoo, all the other great reporters, everybody there. Everybody there. Rob Dew is kicking butt. We need 5 or 6 more people. We need the money to get them hired. I'm not asking for money right now. My point is, I'm telling you my plan. But the big thing is we need to have maybe videos demonstrating how to do it. Because if you can send in Badandi and go, you were running a drill, and then they freak out and everybody looks at the drill, and then now most of America that I talk to goes, oh, yeah, they did it. Even this Esquire guy said, I think it's very fishy. I think it's very strange. Yeah, all this stuff and how and what went on in their CIA connections. America is waking up, and that's what's scaring them. And if the real media, if the alternative media just keeps pushing, it's over, folks. It's over. And that's why do you think they're so scared of us, David Knight?
Well, I guess the question that I have when we look at this pushback is, why wouldn't any of the other reporters ask the questions that Dan Badandi did? Wouldn't you want to know what's going on? If the government is changing their story, or if we've got eyewitness reports that say there's a bomb drill going on, if we've got the police chief saying they were paying special attention to the finish line, why wouldn't you ask them what that's about? And yet, what we see is, after Dan asked that question and the guy said, next question, move on, one of the press conferences, it was when the FBI came out and gave their pictures of the suspects that they had, the 2 brothers. There was about 2 questions later, there was a guy behind Dan, and he said, don't questions like this don't questions that question what you're telling people, doesn't that hurt your investigation? It was a softball question that he's asking this FBI director, and the FBI director says, No. They're agents.
Look, they know, without even being told they're operatives, if they grovel and help, they get the inside info.
Absolutely.
They get to the helicopter rides. They're there blocking. They have a bad term for it, blocking somebody, but they're in there blocking and jamming, and none of the media came over to Dan, except a few mainstream said, no, we agree with you, but we're not allowed to report on it. In fact, a few national people came over that he knew. And so you're absolutely right. You got a lot of courage, kid. But the point is, there's an example of how controlled the prostitutes are. Because there was a drill. It came out in the Boston Globe. There was a drill. And we're demonized as crazy loons who say that Obama did it. All I know is those guys were protected. Exactly. We're simply yelling there's a man behind the curtain. And we're reaching that tipping point. And the power structure thinks they can just demonize us or say we're crazy and it's going to go away. They have no credibility. I was telling the Esquire guy that today. I said, of course, he's more of a slick writer. He said, look, he tries to tell the truth or do a good story, so he keeps getting all the big interviews. He doesn't just do hit pieces. But I said, if you attack me, that makes me stronger because the mainstream media is so discredited. David Knight, we're going to come back and get into a host of articles you've got there, news you think's important, you want to cover here on air. Then we're going to start the second hour with about 30 minutes of phone calls, I promise. And then we've got the evil tea drinker coming on. So stay with us. We'll be right back with a summation of the first hour. I look at these reporters when they call me up and they go, how could you say the government could be involved? And I'm like, the government's been caught over and over again. The Maine, Gulf of Tonkin, so many examples of this. Other governments have done it. Police get caught framing people all the time. What are you talking about? And you catch all these liberal groups constantly staging stuff against themselves. They go, oh, that is true. And so we're not supposed to look at who gains from this when they have a history of lying to us. That's all I'm saying is they're the prime suspect. And then the same MO comes out. And that's why they're scared, folks. They are attacking the public like you're mind-numbed idiots. They think everybody is like the people in the Mark Dice and Infowars.com pieces where they sign petitions to bring in Nazi rule in America if it gets the guts. But everyone isn't like that. I mean, yeah, they may have half the public like that, but those people don't even count. There's like 0.1% of people that are like actual globalist minions that actually are in on the plan probably. Maybe 10% that work for them one way or another. Those people are stupid too on average. This plan is so evil. You don't sign on to this and win. There's no winning with this. And David Knight, that's what I try to get to people. Look at all the evil and the learned helplessness, the mass Stockholm syndrome, the normalcy bias. The Overton window has been moved into la-la land, and I am not going to go along with it. And I am one of the sanest people in the world, and my crew is. And I know that from history. Only an insane person would not be concerned about this, David Knight.
You know, it bothers me when I see this coming from both the left and the right. We saw this article earlier in the week from National Review, incredibly juvenile ad hominem attack, saying that you're not about information, you're about faith. And yet, the reality is that they operate strictly on faith. We're supposed to take whatever the New York Times says, or the National Review, or the Washington Post, we're supposed to accept that on faith because of who they are. Or because they use the appeal to authority and say, well, this is a White House press release. And I'm sorry, but they don't have a monopoly on truth. As a matter of fact, we've seen over and over again how they spin it. And we see how...
That's a conspiracy. Richard Nixon is not a crook. I'm not a crook.
That's right. I mean, take, for example, this thing from the Daily Beast here. Where are Syria's weapons? And then the subtitle says, multiple U.S. officials tell Eli Lake the scary truth. In many cases, we simply don't know. And so they talk about the fact that although they saw trucks being loaded, they were watching via satellite instead of an unmanned aerial vehicle, so they didn't see where it went. Well, the bottom line is, though, they're not asking, how do you know those were chemical weapons? They're just accepting on faith what the government is telling them and putting that out as if it were the truth. We see the same thing happening in the Boston bombing. And, you know, we ought to be all concerned. It operates on so many different levels. I mean, there's a domestic agenda with the police state that we saw happening when they did the martial law search in the area that, of course, many in the mainstream press want to deny even happened, even though we've got video of that. There's also an international agenda that we talked to Sibel Edmonds about earlier this week. But just as a crime scene, we should want to see that justice is done. Because if justice is not done, not only are you punishing an innocent person, but you're letting guilty people go free. And even if the brothers are engaged in this, it's quite obvious to everybody that they didn't act alone. So why can't we...
Absolutely, and this is not 1995 where you got 6 other people with McVeigh and they grabbed 17 surveillance tapes, and the FBI agents 2 years later, LA Times, people can look this up, I have it in my films, I think it's Road to Tyranny, a shot of it. In fact, I interviewed one of the FBI guys. He retired over it. We ought to pull up his name and get him back on. 2 guys go public and say, we saw the tapes, says McVeigh with 6 guys. America has a right to know. Well, those guys should be carried around on people's shoulders. That's a hero. And again, Sibel Edmonds, working for the FBI, listening to the NSA transcripts. Lou Rockwell's got it out at Infowars.com. She said it on my show 5 years ago, but what's old is now big news today because people are more awake. She was listening to stuff 3 months after 9/11 with the CIA still commanding bin Laden. Bin Laden is CIA. He was protected. Ladies and gentlemen, if you go up to prisonplanet.tv, the featured news article is MSNBC guest blows his credibility. And, you know, I think that's a good headline, but I think we should change that headline since it's the featured video. We should change it. It's also on our YouTube channel. We should change it to, in fact, I was thinking about this last night. I watched it with my mouth hanging open. We should change it to MSNBC minion has total meltdown, or MSNBC minion has total meltdown. I mean, he has a meltdown just cussing and frothing. And here's the New York Times admitting the FBI creates most terror threats. Here's the Dan Rather saying, you know, the government helped blow up the World Trade Center the first time. And the guy's just, nothing. Alex Jones says there's nobody real there. None of it. Blah, blah, blah. And then, by the way, that guy's been, well, I'm going to talk about it later. Maybe I have Dude pop in. But that guy's getting a lot of heat right now. And, hey, man, if you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen, bro. And, you know, they brought him on as a cause celeb. Wonderful. He runs up and screams at reporters so that they, you know, and cusses at them. And we need to shut these people down. And then now everybody's getting angry at him. But that video, MSNBC guest blows credibility, is just unbelievable. And that's just some of the articles up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. But going back to David Knight, you're going to be joining us with a big news blitz at the bottom of the hour. I'm going to take calls coming up at 800-259-9231. The phones are open, 800-259-9231. Anybody who wants to call in, you're on air, but just be ready to move on to the next person because I want to try to take, you know, at least 10 calls or so before we get our guest on. And then there'll be more calls into the third hour, and then David Knight's going to host a fourth hour of Overdrive. Some stations do carry the fourth hour. We don't always do it live. I do weird things on my show, different than other people. But that'll be also video streamed at PrisonPlanet.tv. He'll be hosting the fourth hour and taking your calls today. But, David, what else you got coming up at the bottom of the hour?
Well, we've got some information about small businesses. There's an article on Infowars. They're murdering small business. The percentage of self-employed Americans is at a record low. And as this article states, it's from Michael Schneider's Economic Collapse. This is something that's been going on for decades, but it's accelerating. If you look at the graph that's down there, it's like an asymptote. It's going straight down to zero. And there's only about 7% of the people now that have small businesses. And
it's 90% of the new jobs, according to the head of the Small Business League, Mr. Chapman. I mean, that's right. This is incredible. And this is the plan: shut down all real communities. That's the plan.
Yeah, that's the chart right there I was talking about. It's just going down like exponentially down to zero. And, you know, it's more than just job creation. It's more than just helping the economy, because when you look at small business, that is really the mechanism for a lot of people to change their position in the social strata, right? It's your way. That really is your hope of change, is starting your own company and starting your own business. That's something that is, for generations, has been something in my family. You've talked about it, Alex, how if you started today, would you be able to do Infowars if you started today? It's so. If
I started today instead of 18 years ago, I can say we would become successful fighting the globalists, but nowhere near. It'd be 5 times harder.
Right.
Now, knowing what I know, I could still do it. But if I started over at 21 years old, and I'm 39 now, it would be really hard.
It is so much more difficult. And whenever they do these regulations, all these regulations are typically being driven by corruption of big corporations, putting pressure on the federal government to add unnecessary regulations to make it impossible. Most of the burden falls on small businesses, and they want to make sure they don't get any new competition. So what they're really doing is they're cutting off the lower rungs of the ladder.
That's right. It's big business on record worldwide that always lobbies for regulations that they're exempt from.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
They're exempt from it, or they add it into the price of doing business. Just like most of the big corporations get tax exemption.
Right.
And that's great, but they're lobbying to have higher taxes on us because they get it in corporate bailouts and corporate welfare. Great job, David Knight. We'll talk to you at the bottom of the hour. We'll be right back with your calls. Stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live, and we are broadcasting worldwide now into the second hour. Just an update before I hit some news and go right to your phone calls. XM is moving the entire America's talk from 166 to XM 244. So it has nothing to do with our show. It's just a mix-up of the channels they do every few years. So we're moving to XM 244. Starting the 8th of April, I believe. So XM 244 for XM listeners that are out there. And we're going to be going to your phone calls at 800-259-9231 here in just a moment. We knew this was coming, but now it's up on Infowars.com with a clip from the White House basically run anti-American group, anti-foreign banker run MSNBC. Democrats move to exploit terror watch list in new attack on Second Amendment. And they're doing what Rahm Emanuel called for. Obama has said he'll use executive power. They're saying they're going to introduce bills. They've done it before, but it failed. In 2007, it failed, the Lautenberg bill, that just puts you on a no-fly list, no judge, no jury, no proof, no reason. There's over 2 million Americans on it. Last time they released it, they say it's classified, and you cannot own a gun anymore. In fact, you can't buy one, and then they just come and take your guns. And they're also saying in the bill they tried to pass that they can just have government say they think you're mentally ill. The police in Texas, it was in the Austin American-Statesman a month ago, have a bill introduced where they say they think you're crazy. Like, you're crazy. We're taking your kids for CPS because you're homeschooling them, and we say that's illegal when it's not. And you're getting mad. Hey, you're crazy. Imagine the Nazis putting people down in those pits when they shot them. And if they would have complained, they would have said, you're crazy. In fact, they did. They first used the psychologists and psychiatrists to take people to the death camps saying they were mentally ill, and they would the family would get a death certificate saying they died of the flu or they died of this or that. And oh, your 5-year-old died of an aneurysm, or appendicitis. And if you complained, oh, you're crazy too, take the crazy away, bye-bye. And we have an article up here, Rush Limbaugh to be sent to mental health hospital under Stasi snitch program, ? Paul Joseph Watson. And the reason we say that is the Palm Beach where Limbaugh lives, escaping Bloomberg's New York, he says he hates the corrupt government. They say, if you, quote, say you hate the government, call the police on someone, and the police will just come and knock on the door and see if everything's all right. They mean they're going to SWAT team you. That's what they do. So there is some of the report, and their big bombshell report from Lou Rockwell, of all people. And again, this is 5-year-old news, but I give it to Lou Rockwell for going with it because he's respected. They interviewed Sibel Edmonds. She said this before on the show. We should have got her to talk about that. We're talking about the new case. She listened to the phone intercepts before and after 9/11, where the government was commanding bin Laden and commanding the leaders of al-Qaeda, al-Zawahiri, and all the rest of them, who it turned out, some of them were dining secretly at the White House. Look that up. Look up number 3 in al-Qaeda dined secretly at the Pentagon. Then I predicted that since that came out, they'd stage his death, and they did. They didn't really kill that guy. He's basking in the Maui sun. His debt to society paid in full. And who loves you and who do you love? The Running Man. We ought to play that promo intro at the bottom of the hour that John Bound put together. John Bound's going to be with us in studio with David Knight. He's been running around doing great producer work, ferreting out news. I wanted to get the guy that shot the video or the guy that was arrested for iced tea. That's right. Don't have iced tea in America, buddy. That's a stimulant. I'm not kidding. That's coming up. And then the question is, will they arrest Rush Limbaugh? And it's a serious question. I mean, they're always saying, I'm crazy and need to be arrested. That guy's crazy. DHS, this is new and just broke. Paul Joseph Watson. We need to send that over to the Drudgeonator at drudgereport.com. DHS seeks millions of more rounds of ammunition. Market survey asks companies if they can provide 2 million bullets within 30 to 60-day period. So they're sending the census out that some businesses get monthly now. First was every 10 years. Then it was a business census and community census. And listeners send me emails, and I see the comments going, I don't get a business census. You don't run a business that's on the radar. Okay, I've shown it on air. We get them now every year, and they're talking about every month. Well, guess what? The bullet manufacturers at FedBiz Ops website are now being asked, can you, and a bunch of companies are getting this, can you produce millions of bullets, 2 million rounds of ammunition within a very short notice? So they're also trying to ramp up ammo production and then hoard all that. And I've analyzed, if you want to know what's going on with this, this is the big thing. And I've talked to my sources in law enforcement, they concur and have said this is what they've been told. And you've heard cops and captains and others call in and say that as well. But I've confirmed with people I know are federal marshals, Secret Service, FBI, and yes, we have these sources, ladies and gentlemen. There are a lot of good people still in the government. Anyways, the point is that they're told, oh, it's being done to dry up the supply. And even this Esquire guy said, well, yeah, if there's going to be civil unrest and America's armed to the teeth, of course you buy the bullets. to keep people's hands. And I go, well, then why is the media saying we're not? Well, they don't want to add to the hysteria that you're adding. The government and Obama, and it turns out this guy's hooked in with all these people, you know, is really trying to help. And what you're doing is dangerous. And, you know, we're not really all bad. Well, you may not be a bad guy, but I'll assure you the people running the show that control Obama are bad. You know, it's like Albert Speer said, the Nazi head of armaments and a bunch of other stuff. He said in the Nuremberg trial, you don't recognize the devil when he's got his arm around you. And I don't just believe that quote online. I don't just believe, you know, that quote. I actually saw him on PBS interview when I was a kid say that. And, you know, that's how this whole thing works. Okay, I want to go to your phone calls, and I did get the phone system up for folks that know I am able to see it, so thanks to the network. They were texting me who the callers were, but I got it launched here. Let's talk to Daniel in Louisiana. You're on the air. What do you think? They're contacting bullet manufacturers saying, can you produce 2 million bullets on a very short notice? What do you think of that? You're listening on XM 166.
Well, they're definitely trying to keep ammunition out of Americans' hands. Another thing to take note of is that with them demonizing, if you'll notice every time an issue comes up, they demonize specifically the AR-15 as a weapon.
And if they can ban one, they can ban them all. But yes, they're showing that one because they know that's light, it's easy to use, and the American people can really take on the New World Order with it.
And the fact that NATO and UN troops are outfitted with that platform.
And they know they don't want us trained on that platform. Exactly.
That's right, and to be able to share ammunition. Well, what I called for was that yesterday, you know, the Pentagon released a statement that they could possibly be court-martialing anyone that mentions God or witnesses while they're in uniform and on duty.
Yeah, that's Fox News, and I'm so conditioned I didn't even cover that. And by conditioned, I already know that's so true for a decade, that they're persecuting Christians in the military, that I didn't even cover it, and I could be literally hit in the nose for that. They openly came out and admitted what we already knew. If you talk about Jesus, when everybody else can talk about whatever they want, if you talk about Christ to somebody, you will be court-martialed. Well, I say everybody should talk about Christ, and let them court-martial everybody. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The news, and as they always will, they toned it down. My sister is a captain down at Fort Polk in Leesville, Louisiana. And yesterday, all Army officers were briefed that it is now military policy that if they hear you so much as say the word God or Jesus while you're in uniform and on duty, you will be court-martialed. There has not been a sentence set for it, but that is military across-the-board policy. It's not just being considered.
Yeah, well, let me just stop you here. For those that don't know, when they tricked in 1918, after the 1917 revolution, they tricked the brass to turn on their guns, and then they killed them all a week later. Then they tricked the general military who was going out to turn on their guns, because Russians were heavily armed like Americans used to be, or still are. And once they tricked them to turn those in, then they said, you will not mention God, Jesus, and you will no longer go to your Orthodox church or you're dead. And people went along with it, and then they were able to take over. This is the moment in America. And they are going to persecute Christians. Yes, Pentagon confirms that soldiers could be court-martialed for sharing faith. And Fox News confirms it. New American magazine also. Pentagon, religious proselytizing is not permitted. And if you actually read the ruling, it says you are not to talk about God, but everybody else can talk about whatever. You know, there can be gang recruiting, you name it. What do you think this is going to do in the military? Because I have been besieged in a good way by listeners on the streets of Hot Springs, Arkansas, and they're all former military or no military. They tell me what I've seen myself. Let's be conservative, that 30 to 40% of the military are listeners of this show, know it's true because they're being given the training. They know I'm not lying because they're seeing what I've already told them. And that they are totally and completely freaked out. And I mean, the globalists really think they're going to make the military their enemy? What do you make of this?
Well, I think that they want to remove anyone or provide an inroads to remove anyone from the military that has a fundamental moral or ethical code. And even your loosely based Christians that are kind of, you know, borderline agnostic, they still have some sort of a moral code where they value human life. That, you know what I'm saying. And if they could create just a system in which they could target an individual and say, because we know you're a Christian, we heard you say some off-the-cuff comment like, "Oh God, not this again," or something. Well, you said God, you're court-martialed, you're out.
But how do you expect people to go into combat and not pray to God?
You really can't. You can't have a military that's based on, because I mean you would have there would be
no. I mean, I'm going to be honest. These godless people, on average, are a bunch of cowardly chicken necks who couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag, and the globalists haven't deployed the robots yet. So we're not replaced yet. I want to come back to you and see what she said. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, Alex Jones here, back live. The crew had not told me about this because they didn't want to distract me. But we don't say Infowars is under attack like everybody else does when their site has a problem or they didn't pay their server bill and it goes down. I have like 5 top flight IT people, and we have big companies, and we have multifaceted platforms and systems. We are under attack right now, certified, multiple attacks, denial of service, but others as well. Ports, being scanned, people trying to break into things from all over right now. Very sophisticated attack, and we've analyzed it and scanned the ports. The guys are telling me of Breitbart. I don't even know if Breitbart knows this, but they're intermittently giving the same service error. It looks like they're getting attacked as well. We don't know that with them, but it looks like a multifaceted platform attack, which is Obama's cybersecurity system, which even CBS News says is Russian or Chinese-style net censorship and a program to take on the alternative media, something Cass Sunstein talked about. So don't just think Infowars will always be here. Listen, you notice, and David Knight was just talking about this a few days ago, before this even broke on Fox News, that they're coming out and saying Christians are bad, period. It's treason. That was the quote. This is what they're saying in federal briefings. See, separation of church and state means the government can't be involved in your religion and can make no law. It doesn't mean they can tell you can't bring a Bible to school, or you can't tell kids on the playground, "I love Jesus." Or you can say, "I love, G.I. Joe," or "I love My Little Pony. I love Jesus." But they're like, "Oh, no, that's not allowed." And you see all these cases. These are radical authoritarians who their God is the state. And going back to the caller, if David Knight is still there in studio, and I'll get to all the callers. You notice this caller's getting a lot of time because he brings up stuff that's on record. Listening on XM 166, the switch is in about 4 days to XM 244. Daniel, what did your sister say with the officers that were sat down and told? You said it's more radical than even what we're told in the news. And what effect did she say, if any, this had on morale? I mean, this is the Roman Empire 100 years into Christianity had to let their soldiers be Christian because so many had. I mean, this is history repeating itself yet again. This is so over the top, super creepville, total proof of everything we're talking about. I mean, they're building worship centers at Fort Hood for the pagans to have their stuff. And again, any religion goes but Christianity. Go ahead. Tell us what she was saying about that, Daniel.
Well, the main thing that you stressed to me was that the media was going to probably paint it as though there was some flexibility, but that as far as the way they were grouped, there would be no tolerance and no flexibility whatsoever. That there would be no lenience, and that would be one thing to look for. That they're really downplaying it in the media as they always do. But the gist of her message to me was just that she was asking for prayer and for prayer for all of the soldiers, because there are a lot of good people in that position now, that they could be, punished for something that's a basic human right.
Well, I have a cousin who's been in the military as a non-commissioned officer, but has gone about as high as you can go. Let's leave it at that. Who's been in 24 years. He's got 1 more year, and he wanted to go back to combat. He's a great guy, but in his words, he wants to dial on a pile of brass. It's like, serious Nordic-type mindset. And he told me 6 years ago he apologized at a family reunion. I mean, he's pretty close family. I see him all the time. He comes over to my parents' house all the time. And he apologized. He said, "It's true about what you said about the New World Order. We've all been told," and he told me the base where they were told, that we're all going to get microchips. And I later confirmed a lot of troops have gotten these chips, and we're doing it as a test. And then now he said, "National security, I can't talk to you at all. I probably didn't get promoted to an even higher level. They brought you up." And I go, "Well, is it secret about the chip?" And he goes, "Just don't talk about me anymore." Well, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not saying your name, but they obviously know who you are. I mean, come on, bud. And I know you want to go fly around and do all the stuff you do. You're addicted to it. That guy's been everywhere. I mean, Latin America, Asia, Middle East. When I was a kid, he was being deployed to the Middle East for the first time. I remember him in his uniform marching off to be deployed to covert operations. But, I mean, you know, these guys already got microchips. I mean, I could have them call in right now. What do you make of that? I mean, they use the military as their guinea pigs.
It's so hard to say because there are so many variables, but it's just I do believe that they test a lot of that technology that they would like to use on us later in the military because they know they can get away with it. They know a lot of those guys, especially in higher positions, have no choice, and so they'll use them as a test bed to test the technology for one. The other is that I think they let a little bit of that information leak out over time just to kind of introduce that rhetoric to the public.
Absolutely. God bless you. David Knight, we're going out to break, but after our guest leaves us here, and you're going to be riding shotgun right now, I want to get David Knight's take on this because, folks, I mean, man, it doesn't matter who you are. There's a war on Christians. They have taken the churches over. They've made them 501c3. They're taking the crosses out. And if your preacher isn't talking about this, they're a wicked devil, and you need to leave that church because it's not a church. All right, we've got David Knight in studio. We've got John Bound in studio. And we have Tino Brown in Fayetteville, North Carolina, that shot the video that has gone viral since it went up on Infowars.com. Man drinking iced tea in parking lot gets arrested. A can of tea can apparently land you in the can. And, well, yeah, it was drinking the iced tea. And I mean, this is so well known, probably one of the best-selling drinks out there. Is Arnold Palmer's Arizona iced tea. Well, he explained it to the state liquor officer, and for those that don't know, most of the East Coast and the Old South, if any type of alcohol is sold, it is a state store, and the state runs it. And you've got the liquor police running around trying to stop everybody. And it is a real travesty to see all this unfold. We're going to go to Tino Brown, who shot the video here in a moment of the ununiformed. I mean, this is a police state, and we're not here to bash police yourselves, but the people directing the system. We have the most prisons anywhere in the world. They're building more. They're making felonies now for basically picking your nose. And the government's run by criminals that launder hundreds of billions of drug money a year publicly, like Wells Fargo and Wachovia, and no one gets in trouble. And the public are just a bunch of dumbed-down chumps, basically, they're being fed on. And this is a recipe for disaster, historically, for those that don't know. We're going to go to Tino Brown in a moment, but give people the details of this, because I know you're from North Carolina. David Knight, they're giving us a news breakdown. And then John Bound has also been contacted by the Fayetteville police, and so he's got some additional info on this before we go to Tino Brown to get his take. David Knight.
Well, Alex, all I know about it, because I don't drink as a personal choice, but all I know about it is that, like you said, in North Carolina, only the state is allowed to sell anything other than beer or wine. So you have to go to an ABC store. They're run by the North Carolina state government, which makes the North Carolina state government the largest drug pusher in the state. But anyway, I don't know anything about it, except this is evidently somebody that's not a regular police officer. This is somebody that belongs to that particular bureaucracy. And just like you see with bureaucrats everywhere, they're on this power trip, you know, and really kind of setting this up to entrap people. And we see this happening more often to minorities than we do other people. When you look at the ratio of people that are arrested for marijuana and that sort of thing, it's very skewed in terms of the population. I mean, it's bad that this is happening to anybody, but it absolutely does skew if you look at the statistics.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it right. Kombucha tea.
Yeah.
My wife likes it. My kids like it, and it had like maybe 0.5% alcohol in it. You'd have to drink like 30 bottles of it to even feel anything. And they made them cut it down and basically ruin it to have basically no alcohol in it. And now there's these other restaurants and places that put out the other type of sauces and are being told, we're going to arrest you two. Nothing can have any alcohol. They're talking about making scope and Listerine which no one would drink to get high, it'd kill you. They're trying to make that illegal. There's moves I've seen. So it's all about finding new ways to get you. And I saw articles about arrest, and they would have liquor SWAT team raids on stores that when they finally passed the state laws in different states, that if they hadn't got it off the shelves in time, they would clap them in handcuffs and try to put the store owners in jail who didn't even know. How do you pronounce it? Kombucha tea? And... yeah, kombucha. Okay. I'll finally get it right.
And that tea is an Asian tea. It's got a very, very minor amount of fermentation, and it has other health benefits. And there was a case not too long ago where some child, a lot of people will brew this in their own home. They'll keep that fermentation going. And a mother was giving that to her child on a regular basis, and the family and the child, of course, got in a great deal of trouble with the government school over that. They treated it as if the mother was giving them whiskey or something on a...
Oh, yeah, I've seen arrest over a Luden's cough drop that should be in the candy aisle. There's not even, it was a cherry Luden's in the case, not even menthol in there. It was not a drug, but don't worry, they arrested her while the government ships the narcotics in. They ship it in to then watch us, the slaves, get it, and then throw us in their prisons. This is the new modern slavery. They know what they're doing. They brought down China with it. Look up the Opium Wars for people that don't know. Tino Brown in North Carolina. They're in Fayetteville, sir. Thank you for coming on. We're going to get to you here in just a second. John Bound, you got a call from the police on this. Tell us about that. We're adding that to the article.
Yeah, we weren't sure exactly who this officer represented, so I called the Fayetteville PIO yesterday, and he returned. Okay, so you called him. Yeah, he returned the call this morning, and basically said that they just show up on the scene. At the end of the video, you can see the police show up, and that's the Fayetteville police. They don't really know what's going on. But he said that officer does not work for the Fayetteville police, that he works for ABC. Actually, it's called ALE is the name, the Alcohol Law Enforcement Division, Department of Crime Control and Public Safety there in North Carolina. So this officer represents this cartel of alcohol enforcement there in North Carolina.
Well, sure. I mean, I've seen Austin, and we're going to our guest code enforcers, because I was sitting there with my parents and saw them go to their neighbor's house, and the guy was fixing his shed. And these guys get out in these tan uniforms. They're not even sworn officers. Well, one of them was because he had a gun and a badge, and they walked over real aggressive, and their eyes were twinkling, and they talked to him, and he was sitting there sawing in his front yard. And he looked at them, and they saw me filming and got all aggressive. I have some of it on tape. I've never uploaded it yet. And because the neighbor kind of got freaked out and said, "Hey, man, I don't want to be on TV, but I am a listener." But the point is they're like crazed. They're like looking at you like, "I'm scaring you." And it doesn't scare me. It's like, get ready, everybody. Get at me. You know, there's a tyrant when they act like this. And I watched a video of this cop.
A petty tyrant.
Well, no, I mean, they come over crazed like criminals in an alley act. And all I want to do is stomp them.
Vampires.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying they're petty tyrants. And if you watch the video, X, as I call him, Extravagant is the name of the rapper. He clearly does nothing wrong at all that anybody would have done that.
And by the way, he's even a clean-cut looking guy. He's bad enough of the guy.
This guy's not a criminal. This guy's just waiting to meet some people to shoot a video later on. His music's not even up loud coming out of his car. You can clearly hear him talking. His music's not even loud.
Yeah, you can't even sit in a parking lot by a gas station.
It's a trap.
And drink an iced tea. No, I've been sitting there by the airport when I had to pick up Dave Mustaine a few weeks ago. And his flight was a little bit late, so I stopped at a gas station down from the airport. I went and bought some chips, bought a bottle of water. I'm sitting there surfing my iPhone, and what are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm waiting for somebody. Well, you can't wait here. And I said, did the store call you? I've only been here 10 minutes. And he's like, nope, but you need to move along. I mean, it's just all about, I'm in control. I'm your boss. You are scum. Get used to it. Let's bring up Tino Brown. Tino, tell us when this happened. What else happened behind the scenes? Break down what you saw go on here, Tino.
Okay, well, first I'd like to say thanks for having me on the show, Mr. Jones, and hello to all the other guests as well. What happened that day was Extravagant. I'm an independent filmmaker. He called me to do a music video for him, and I came out, I shot the music video for him. We were on our way to another location to do another scene, and they were like, you know, let's stop and grab a couple of drinks from the liquor store. And we pulled up to the liquor store, and I figured, you know, let's get a little extra footage, you know, just in case I may find something to edit to throw in the video. And as soon as he pulled up, pretty much the video speaks for itself. That's exactly what happened. You know, as you see, I'm parked near the garbage can, so it was very shortly after I jumped out the car that I was able to film him. So right from that point, I just felt like...
And the liquor cop, I mean, the liquor cop can't admit he's wrong later. He's just got to... I mean, why do you think he still arrested him for tea? Break down what happened for radio listeners who haven't seen the video.
Well, what happened was he came over assuming that it was alcohol. The tall can, you know, I guess the assumption, African-Americans, malt liquor, tall cans. So when he came over, of course, we were both startled. There was no uniform. It was just like a stranger coming up. And he's coming aggressively. So he's like, what are you drinking? And he said, well, who are you? I'm drinking tea. So he tries to grab the can, and he says, no, I'm not gonna let you grab it. So he shows it to him. He reads it to him, half and half, sweet tea. And the guy says, well, let me read the ingredients. And which seems both to us just an excuse, because everyone knows Arizona iced tea does not put alcohol in that iced tea.
No, I mean, I probably couldn't have controlled myself. I mean, you watch the video, and it's just a crazy weirdo who never gets sick of messing with people. I mean, if he pulled up and people are totally drunk in a car, boom, you got him, cops come over, it's a done deal. But, I mean, it's an iced tea. It says iced tea. It's one of the biggest sellers in the country.
Yeah, and people are, the main question online is, well, did he spike it beforehand? No one knows. But the truth is this. First of all, I'm a 35-year-old man. If I drink alcohol, I can legally, and I'll tell you if I did, and he's over 21 as well. He served in the military for over 5 years, and he fought in Iraq.
Well, that's why they probably hate him. But again, we're all enemies we put in prison. The point is they look for any excuse in this. But please continue.
Yeah, but I guess I'm just going to end it with, as you see, we never made it inside the liquor store. So it's, you know, so there was no liquor inside of that iced tea. And I guess my point is, people are saying, well, you should have just let him smell it. Well, he asked for the ingredients. He didn't ask to smell it. Maybe he wanted to smell it, but he actually asked to look at the ingredients. And it would have been totally irrelevant looking at a Arizona iced tea can's ingredients.
But I mean, listen, in Austin, they've got billboards up flashing saying, don't drink and walk. And then people are like, well, that's reasonable. Ever heard of public intoxication? And they had a guy who drank 3 beers in his own hotel steakhouse down at the Radisson in downtown Austin. I've eaten down there. There's a steakhouse down there. The cop watched him drink 3 beers over 2 hours. He was a businessman who'd flown in, done the meeting, watches a baseball game, drinks 3 Miller Lights, and is going to go up to his room, and they famously arrested him for being drunk in public. Over 2 hours, a businessman in a sports jacket eating a steak cannot drink 3 beers over 2 hours watching a baseball game. Is that a free country to go to his hotel room and go to sleep? I mean, this is I'm sorry, sir, I'm ranting. So break down the arrest. I mean, what did you think once that started? I mean, break down when he wants to see the ingredients. He's already shown it to him. What happens next?
Well, he shows him what it says. It's iced tea. And then he says, no, put it in my hand. Let me read the ingredients. And at this point, like I said, he hasn't showed a badge. It's like a stranger. So it's like, who are you? He says the police. He hasn't showed identification. So no one's going to hand him over the tea for him to put his nose or his lips on it. And then at that point, he starts to get aggressive with Extrav. And everyone knew, and I felt like our rights were just being totally violated. I mean, I just felt violated. Everyone felt violated. Even onlookers felt violated because we all felt like, I felt like that could have been me. He could have had the camera on me. Hey, let me hold the camera and you talk a little bit. And that could have been me with a can in my hand. And, you know, it totally it didn't cross my mind until afterwards that I looked and I found, you know, Trayvon died from iced tea and Skittles or Arizona iced tea. And it's like, you know, what's going on here? You know, so I felt totally violated just to look at it. This has been my friend for over 10 years. He served in the military for over 5 years. I don't know if this security guard has, but he's been to Iraq. I just felt totally violated.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yes, sir.
I just want to add that the shock that you feel is that it feels like an entire generation is being arrested right in front of you.
Yes.
For just being you. You know?
Yes.
And that's it.
Well, the issue is the system is like lions eating gazelles. It sees us as food, and the secret police security guard just shows up and says, give me your drink. Doesn't even say who he is, and is so. And I'd be like, who are you? Tell me who you are. It would have never even gotten past that. Then I'd say, what's your probable cause? And I'd say, I'm leaving. You can do whatever you want. But instead, you act nice, and then it gets to this point. So then what came next for radio listeners?
What happened after that, he was thrown to the ground, grabbed by his neck, just manhandled, basically, in front of everyone in public. He was cuffed. He was on the ground, and it kind of reminded me just an animal, like a deer, you know, when they shoot them and they kind of just leave them there and that's kind of how it felt.
No, that's what the training is. We are animals. You've hit the heart of the New World Order. They're God, we're animals. Go ahead.
And then eventually an actual police car pulled up, and the cop comes out running, and by that time there's 3-4 people filming now. And I asked the cop, you know, do you want to see the evidence? You want to see the evidence? And, you know, of course, as you can see in the footage, nothing mattered. And he was gone.
I got to be honest, I'm surprised this guy starts grabbing him and Extravagant didn't do something. Because, I mean, it's just, what these are is wimps who want to beat people up but don't want to be in a real fight. And I'm really sick of it. I mean, that's what I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I said before, Extrav is a former military soldier. He's very well disciplined, and he's also very well trained for combat. And since he's had experience in Iraq, you know, he knew what he was capable of, but he also knew the consequences. So, you know, it was just a situation.
No, I understand. I'm saying it showed incredible restraint. Now, they always like to trump stuff up after they've set you up. Where is all this going now?
Right now, he has a court date set for June 6th in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and we'd like for any supporters or anyone who wants to voice their opinion on the situation. They can follow me on Twitter at Tino Brown 315, and they can also just keep staying on top of the YouTube channel, and it's going to court.
Absolutely. He should make a rap video or hip-hop video about this and the Constitution. It'd be super hot. That's how you fight back, is in the info war.
You know what, Mr. Jones? I want to really commend you, because right now he's in the studio working on it, and we're doing a video for it, and it's going to be something that it's about rights and the people, and it's going to be something that if you stand up for this, it's going to be something that you can share and going to want to support.
Fight the power.
And he's going to speak on it.
Absolutely. I want to do another segment and get John Bound and David Knight's take on this. We're going to come back in the next hour and take calls. But you know, now they're saying the military can't talk about Jesus. All our basic rights as individuals are being taken. And so the cops are trying to act like they weren't part of this. But I mean, Fayetteville police did show up. They're all part of this. It's part of their system. And were they all proud when they put him in the police car and took him to jail? And what are they charging him with?
They're charging him with trespassing and resisting arrest, which everyone saw he didn't elbow or throw a punch or...
Yeah, and that's a felony in a lot of areas. So, yeah, I saw that in the news. I was just making sure it was accurate. Now, we're going to come back and talk about this, folks. Not only is he gone to jail for iced tea, now it's an open for business place. He never gets there to buy whatever he was going to buy. You know, go home after the shoot, evil veteran. But now they're going to charge him with resisting to try to put him in jail because they're the winners, and they're going to show you the New World Order's the winners. Let me tell you something, bad cops. The New World Order's going to show you who's boss. They're going to destroy you as well. All right, folks, your calls are coming up. Then we got Lionel, big TV host in New York, who's been exposing the tyranny. He's going to pop in after we take a bunch of your calls. I appreciate people holding. Look, I'm ranting, Tino Brown. You shot the video. It just so upsets me that, you know, you guys are polite, you're nice, you're like, it's an iced tea. He does this, then they manhandle him, they basically attack him, tie him up like an animal, and then charge him with resisting. And I think they all need to be sued. I mean, it's just government needs to be brought under heel. It's out of control. It thinks it's God. And other points you'd like to add about, you know, the Fayetteville police are acting like they're not part of this. Is that true?
Yes, they are acting like they're not part of it. And I can't confirm, but from what I read online, they're saying that ABC is saying that the officer acted within law and he did his job correctly.
Yeah, they arrest people in Austin and Lago Vista for not wearing seatbelts. A woman was getting her mail like 200 yards from her house and took her seatbelt off to get it. And they took her kids, too. So I think you ought to permanently take your kids and send them to Siberia for no seatbelt. This is what these tyrants will do. They do it in every case in history. I'm sorry, I'm ranting. Other points you or John Bound or David Knight would like to add. Anything else you'd like to add, Tino Brown?
I just think that people should continuously stand up for things like this. You know, there's cases like this that go on every day in America. Unfortunately, artists, you know, they aren't followed by HD cameras like, you know, how I followed Extrav that day. But if you see something like this, I would just urge anyone to report it to websites like yours, people like yourself, and other outlets, as well as local media stations. And please just stand by your word and know your Constitution and stand for your Constitution, because it was written by the forefathers and it's the law of the land. It's over federal and state. Know it and don't let them violate it.
Absolutely. I would say things, I mean, you know what to rap, but I'd say if they could take it from me, they can take it from you.
That's right.
And I mean, I would just, you know, break it down. They think that we're their slaves. They think they're turning this whole thing into a big prison. And it's time for the good cops to stand up and say no to this. But, man, I tell you, these liquor enforcement people are the worst. Did you know in Texas they arrest people for drinking even 1 or 2 beers in a bar?
Wow.
I'm not joking.
In a bar?
Guys, pull it up. Man arrested for drinking 3 beers in Austin bar. Absolutely. I mean, these are nuts. I lived in a...
Alex, can I say something here?
Yes, go ahead.
One of the things that's changed here is exactly what Tino Brown did, and that is video, taking video. And everybody's got a cell phone. Almost all cell phones take videos now. So now there's a lot of eyes out on the street. You know, Peter King said that they needed more cameras because of the Boston bombing. Well, he didn't want more of us to have cameras. He wanted the government to have the cameras. But the fact that we've got video, the fact that we've got internet, that's what can change some of this. That's what can change public opinion. And like you said, I look at that, even as somebody that doesn't drink, somebody that's not black, that makes me feel insecure to see that the police can do that and get away with it. And right now, they're still getting away with it. You can sue them, and you can get some money out of that. But what's going to happen to the officers that do that? Absolutely nothing, and they know that.
But if he would have resisted, which would be a normal human instinct, they'd have killed him.
Absolutely.
And the other issue is they still charge you when you don't resist.
Yeah, they should.
That guy undoubtedly, Extrav, was probably putting Iraqis in paddy wagons to, you know, be sent off to wherever. So he knew. You know, so he controlled himself, but that still wasn't good enough. Being run over by tyranny, submitting, isn't even enough for these people. And that's what's crazy. Tino Brown, I want to invite you to get Extrav on ASAP on the Nightly News or next week, because I want to break this tonight. If you can get him, I'd like to have you on the Nightly News to have him talk about this as well. But great job standing up for freedom. We'll be back. Okay, Lionel, the New York TV host, I need to pull his bio up. He's going to be breaking down a lot of the stuff he's been covering. And then we're going to have David Knight in the 4th hour of Overdrive. Some stations carry it, but you can follow the video streams and audio streams at Infowars.com/listen. He's been doing a whole 4th hour on persecution of Christians. And Holder telling states, don't you try to nullify our federal gun laws. So and the Secret Service is now going to be their new Praetorian Guard, whether it's stopping reporters from asking questions or going after sheriffs that don't become federal minions. And Christians are being told, you don't talk about Jesus in the military or you're going to be court-martialed, which is totally unconstitutional. Gary in Arizona wants to talk about our favorite little redcoat, Piers Morgan. You're on the air.
Alex, I just want you to know it's going to be an honor for you to talk to me, and I'll tell you why. Because you're a humble guy, I know that, and I'm going to promote you to General. So from now on, we're going to call you General Jones. And here's why. Because when you were on that Piers Morgan program, it was absolutely amazing. Finally, someone got out there and spoke up. Now, a lot of people called you too aggressive, and I know that you were a little concerned about it after the fact. But no, not to be concerned, because that's what we need now. This isn't about hating the government. It's definitely, in my opinion, it's about loving liberty. How much do you love liberty? So I would say to all of your listeners, just speak out. You don't have to, you don't have to go crazy. You certainly don't want to go into any kind of cause disruption. But all you have to do is speak out, because
it's civil disobedience, and it begins with speaking up and saying, "I know you want to confiscate my guns and make me a slave. Stop playing games. Break the silence. Break the trance." And I'm able to analyze what I've done instinctively against them, and it's the stuff of history that defeats tyrants. And I'm telling you, we didn't become free by laying down. Liberty and freedom is not given; it is taken, it is demanded, and that's what we've got to do. And anything else, Gary?
Yes, but here's the thing. Now you've been promoted to general, and of course I'm kidding you, but most people are not as aggressive as you. They could never be that aggressive, but they could talk to their neighbors. They could talk to their friends. They could talk to a stranger that they might meet.
Sure, I'm not aggressive in person. I'm a big sweetie pie. When people are dominating me and robbing me of my liberty, man, I get mad. If I saw a guy stealing my car, I'd get. I don't even care about it that much. I know I'd get it, but I'd still be like, man, that feel violated, and then I'd feel violated about where I live, But it's the same thing. It's like when criminals rob your house, that feeling of being violated. And it's happened to me before. That's what I feel like. It's like, man, and then they sit there and lecture us how great they are. No, you're acting like a bunch of crooks.
I believe that was a turning point. I believe that when you were on the Piers Morgan show, that was a turning point for the movement of liberty, for liberty. I sincerely believe that, because people, all of a sudden, people, I think, woke up. Even the lame brains in the media said, "Hey, what's this all about?" And it really got people to recognize that there is a movement going on, and it is really all about Infowars. It really is about Infowars, and that's why I say people have to speak up. It's information. Now, you mentioned earlier, and then I'll give other callers a chance. You mentioned earlier about you needing people to help your cause. What about writers?
Yeah, we're too overwhelmed to even go collect all the other people that have websites that are good writers and get them to be on Infowars. We need people to send us good stuff, people to create their own sites. I mean, I think it's just an idea, but you're right. What a freaky thing. Infowars is one of the main resistance systems worldwide of the New World Order, because I was willing to do it and build it, but I'm nobody special. It's an idea that's special. We're going to come right back with more of your calls. Thank you for the kind words, Gary. God bless you. Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. Central, we're here. You know something? We need to break the silence, though. With your lover, there's no need to break the silence. But it's good to break the silence with tyrants, and that's what America needs to do today, ladies and gentlemen. Look at this story up at drudgereport.com. I want to get this over on Infowars.com. So I know Kurt and Emma wrote about it. Paul Watson wrote about it 3 years ago, that they were going to blame Mexican violence on gun owners. And then Fast and Furious came out that it was their plan to indeed blame the violence they engineered. That's they say in the memos. It's time to flash that back. Nobody even knows that. People go, really? CBS reported the memo said it was done to blame the Second Amendment? Yes, we have them, a false flag. And as Larry Pratt said, if they'd stage that false flag, they'd stage anything. So we need to do an article on this. He goes to Mexico, an incredible photo, and blames Mexican violence on U.S. guns when the Mexican government took the guns from their people so the criminals and the government can run everything. Real clear politics with the transcript. Most of the guns used to commit violence here in Mexico come from the United States. Not true. President Obama, fully auto, hand grenades, you name it, it's being flown in by U.S. banks. Said during a speech at Mexico's Anthropology Museum, I think many of you know it's America. Our Constitution guarantees our individual right to bear arms. And as a president, I swore an oath to uphold that right, and I always will. But at the same time, she needs to say, Bloomberg says he loves the Second Amendment. It means you turn your guns in. But at the same time, as I've said in the United States, I will continue to do everything in my power to pass common sense reforms that keep guns out of the hands of criminals and dangerous people. that can save lives here in Mexico and back home in the United States. It's the right thing to do. So he's trying to neutralize opposition while energizing his base when they're the ones that staged it. Unbelievable. And then there's this story getting no attention. It needs to get attention. Infowars.com. DHS seeks millions more rounds of ammunition. Market survey asks companies if they can provide 2 million bullets within 30 days. What it is that the headline should be, and Watson does a great job breaking all this. We need another article on this, maybe by Steve or Kurt or Adon or somebody, or other people that listen. Do your own article. DHS moves to corner the market because they're going out to all the big suppliers. It's all official and released by the feds to see if we'll just buy what all of you can make, everything, even calibers that people don't use. I just tweeted that out at Real Alex Jones. So please retweet it. Real Alex Jones on Twitter. And I'm going to get more of this with Lionel coming up because he did a big report on the bullets. But, I mean, this is bigger than just DHS seeks millions more rounds. They are seeking hundreds of millions more on top of $2.2 billion while denying it. And they're gone out to all the big manufacturers and said, what can you do in just 30 to 60 days? This is incredible. This is huge. I mean, this is the biggest arms buildup of bullets the world has ever seen right now. Okay, let's go to your calls. Let's go to your calls because Lionel's coming up. I just had to get that news out. It's so important. Let's go to, by the way, people are drawing those conclusions in the comments, too. It's not, I mean, this is important. Great job, Watson. CJ in Canada, you're on the air, sir.
You and Alex, and God's peace to you.
God's peace to you, brother.
I have to say to begin with, I think you're a modern-day prophet, a voice crying out in the wilderness. People need to wake up and pay attention and listen to you and get right with God. As a Canadian, I'm freaked out about the purchase of billions of rounds and 2,700 anti-mine tanks that the Department of Homeland Security's purchased for use on the USA soil. We're living in really dangerous times, and Alex, Satan wants to rip you to shreds. I pray for you and your family's safety because the elite are starting to get really desperate, and I fear they will do desperate things. They might come after you. So be really, really careful.
No. I mean, Homeland Security admits their architecture is to fight veterans and active duty, and they're now saying they're the #1 terrorist. I never really agreed with this because I didn't believe they could pull it off, but their entire battle plan and what's official is to use 15 nations during a uprising in America, and I think they may actually nuke us and invade with foreign troops. Because I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if I look as a military person that studied military history and actions, and what they admit, or maybe they're just really on a power trip, they really want to start a civil war and take on 10 million veterans and about half the military, and they really think they're going to get away with it. They're crazy. They are out of their gourd Looney Tune. They're already in control. They're already stealing $85 billion a month to the Federal Reserve. They've already gutted the family. They're already killing kids with their vaccines, but they want it all now. They want to kill Christians, and they don't want to wait. And I'm telling you, that's what it comes down to. Go ahead, sir.
I actually had a dream about a nuke, an offshore nuke on the USA, so it's funny that you say something like that. Look, if you get a chance, you got to check out a YouTube video called The Coming Alien Savior Deception with Sid Roth and Tom Horn and Chris Putnam. You'll learn that the Catholic Church, the Vatican, have built a device, and they're involved in something called the Lucifer Project. They've been watching the heavens with the world's most powerful telescope, more powerful than the Hubble telescope.
And you've got Krim and you've got all these other guys, and they're going to do blue beam. It's declassified. They've had a plan since the 60s to create holograms and show Jesus return or aliens. I don't know if they'll go with that, but that's definitely. I was asked by the Esquire guy, well, if aliens invaded, would you unify humanity? You know, because we can't ever get things done because you say don't trust the government. Yeah, because it's a bad government. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's a great deception is coming on the world, and the Vatican's going to be involved. The Pope's going to be up there, try to get the Christians. I mean, the Christians are going to be persecuted. You and I are going to be persecuted because we're not going to accept the new gospel that the Vatican tried to force down our throat.
Well, whatever happens, they're going after. But what do you say about the Homeland Security report to the military saying all Catholics are extremists with Al Qaeda next to them, and then evangelicals and a bunch of other groups? I think they're just going after everybody. But I know that they've been doing that ecumenicalism at the Vatican, saying merge the religions and stuff. It's freaked a lot of Catholics out too. It's just really crazy times, folks. These are social engineers. I appreciate your call. And if they ask for 1 million miles and only get 500,000, they still win. You see, that's why they're just going for everything. And going, we didn't buy 2,700 and then 7,000 more armored anti-mine tanks. We didn't get 1 billion bullets. We didn't get 1.6 billion. First, Alex said it was 300 million. Then he said it was 1 billion. Then 1.6, then 2 billion. How many bullets is it, Alex? And I say to the press, I go, you do that trick to your audience? You think they're that dumb, your readers? This is over a year we've been reporting. You're buying more. You got discredited. It was. I mean, I guess they have an audience that's that dumb. They have an audience that when they get up on the news and go, I actually saw an article this morning that said Alex Jones is the worst man in America. And the people in the comments were like, some of them were like, I don't even like Alex Jones, but it's down to like, bad man, bad man, bad man, bad man, Alex Jones, bad man. I mean, it's just like, what? It's like a bunch of lunatics. Bunch of lunatics running things. I'm a bad man while you black helicopter drills everywhere and 7,000 armored vehicles and checkpoints everywhere, and the manuals say they're trying to take our guns and kill veterans, and it's incredible. Chris in New York, ammo shortage. Go ahead, sir. You're on the air. You want to talk about that?
Yes. Just wanted to let you know, for the past month or so, I've been going out trying to buy ammunition, and every store is out. And even this morning, I went out early as possible, and I just wanted to pick up some 22. And, you know, I'm in the, Nazi New York Empire with Commissar Cuomo, and I can't get it. And apparently even
No. It's the Vampire States building now that Cuomo and Bloomberg are in control. It's the Vampire State. I want to redub it the Vampire State. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, even, a 1022, that's illegal to own here now because of how many rounds it holds. And, you know, we can't even do that. But you go to the shelves, and the only thing we can find is target loads for 12 gauge and 20 gauge. And even that's starting to run low. And it's not a conspiracy theory. People need to go out and look at the shelves because they are empty. There is
America is under a foreign banking soft coup. Paramilitary is there to back it up. I mean, it's official. They're shutting the businesses down, everything. And I can analyze their entire attack profile and show you where they admit their attack profile. We're under total attack, and that's why I get so mad at cops and military that aren't awake yet, is, listen, you are destroying your future. And you're like, well, what do we do? Man, I don't know what we do. But we speak out against this. We say no to it. I mean, if I'm willing to put my life on the line, and people are like, we can't believe it. You are actually becoming the leader, and they're coming after you, the left and right. They're going to, well, you know what? Pray for us, and if they destroy me, I ask for it, okay? But I want it known. I ask for it. Because, listen, there's no future if we don't beat them, brother. Go ahead.
I was going to say, one thing is I try to tell people about these numbers of ammunition and the quantities, and some of them catch on, but nobody really realizes how much 1 billion actually is. And I had a suggestion for the show, the Infowars video. You know how, like, the Fox or anyone else has those rolling numbers at the bottom for the Dow Jones or anything else? I was going to say, maybe you guys could get something in there that shows, you know, National Weather Service has this many bullets, and just show the counts going up, and just have that, you know.
Absolutely. We've got ticker stuff. We just don't have the crew to grab the latest numbers and put it in. But we could do that as kind of a piece where we had like a big ticker tape going, you know, 2,000 more armored vehicles, you know, 50 million more bullets this month, total number 2 billion, you know, like a bullet ticker. We could have a bullet ticker and checkpoint ticker, police ticker, prison population ticker, foreign bank bailout tickers. They're just vampires just sucking us dry. And we're like struggling a little bit. They're like, no, NPR voice. Don't listen to that bad, mean Texan, you scary man. The government's coming to help you. Yeah. Lionel's coming up. Stay with us. I'm your host, Alex Jones, and the man known as Lionel, a lawyer, constitutional lawyer. He's been a prosecutor. You can find out more about him at pix11.com, big hit TV news show in New York. He's been a syndicated radio host, you name it. You've heard him on the show 4 or 5 times over the years. I wanted to get him on for the balance of the hour and talk about the fact that, you know, he's been breaking some of the bullet news on his TV show and his commentaries. He's been talking about it as well. And we're going to give you his website where you can find all those YouTube videos in one spot. But, you know, Lionel, what do you make of the big, you know, as a journalist, as a lawyer, as a former prosecutor, what do you make of the buildup, the armored vehicles, the billions of bullets, and then the trying to deny them? Because I saw your piece, it was so dead on. What do you make of that?
Since the night you were on Piers Morgan, what was one of the greatest moments in television history. I mean, it was, if we could have put a plethysmograph, an internal body cavity monitor, Mr. Morgan, it was just beautiful. I'm still reeling from that. So I haven't spoken from you since then, and how that got everything going, and it's such an honor to be back on this incredible show. Let me tell you what happened. Alex, I didn't uncover anything. I'm asking questions. I have 2 websites. If I could just give one site, that's all I want to give. It's
absolutely, give them both out. Yeah,
you can go and hear the questions that I did. And I put 2 videos together. Just go to pix11.com/ammo. pix11.com/ammo. 2 videos, February 21st, March the 18th. All I did was ask the following questions. What is this? What's going on? Now, a couple of things. First, one of the things that we have noticed, and I have noticed, and you probably have as well, whenever you talk about the Second Amendment, and I am not a Second Amendment advocate, Second Amendment fan, I'm a Bill of Rights fan, I'm a Constitution fan. This is the only government, the only country that has a rule book and a set of rules. If you ask a Frenchman or an Italian, what do you have to do to be a Frenchman? They say, I don't know. If you say, what do you have to do to be an American? You follow right here, this, the Constitution. This is not just, it's not a suggestion, it's the rules. Okay, so the question of the Second Amendment is, what is it for? Now, I don't want to go through this, you know this, but when people talk, they'll say, look, the Second Amendment never really implied or never intended for any kind of assault weapons on your part, number one. And the answer is, oh, yes, it did. Read Tench Cox's incredible founding fathers. Read his words. You will not believe it. It was precisely put in there. As you know, the Second Amendment was not about camping or fishing or hunting or target practice or even self-protection. It was about, and you know the story, this protection of you, an inherent ability to protect yourself, whether it's from rogue governments, a rebellion, maybe wandering rogue, who knows, bombers walking through streets, locking down Boston. It could be a variety of things. And normally when you're able to protect yourself, or when you want to protect yourself and your family, you need the best arms available at your suggestion, based upon your desire, not some laundry list. All right, that being said.
Because as a prosecutor, you know, we're not criminals unless we've been indicted and then adjudicated and proven. Why can we not be trusted to have guns, but then government can, and then we know criminals aren't going to follow the law, so they're going to have guns? Again, this is just common sense, and you can see both the videos at pix11.com/ammo. But I mean, let me ask you this question. We've got both the videos, and coming back, I want to play some of them. Which one do you think we should play?
The first one, February 21st. This is the first. All I did was ask a question. And then what's critical about these videos is this. People will say, what are you talking about, rogue government? Whatever made you either distrust or think for a moment that the government could somehow get out of hand, almost like a metastatic cancer, that it could turn, especially domestic? Now, good luck explaining posse comitatus. Good luck explaining this firewall, this constitutional firewall between domestic, law enforcement and military. Good luck. I try all the time, and you can hear the snoring. So I said, and I asked a question, either one of 2 things are happening. Number one, when you look at the basics, and you've spelled it out in others, when you look at the amount of bullets, hollow point, which, by the way, are not even used in the rules of war, because contrary to people's beliefs, when in war, you want to use either ball ammo or full metal jacket. You don't want to, you want to wound. You want.
Stay there. Explain that when we come back. And by the way, there's a mainstream news article today out about police being taught military tactics of fighting insurgents, and they're being taught the American people are now insurgents. We'll be right back with Lionel.
We're on the mark.
I told you a year ago, the ad still runs, that we were about to go to the next level. I have studied history. I know how to beat these people. They know that I know how to beat them. And I've read hundreds of military history books, hundreds of propaganda books. The truth is the ultimate weapon. I know their program. I know their plan. Does that mean I have the energy or even the intellect to do it all myself? No, I don't. And there's nothing more frustrating than knowing there's an authoritarian criminal offshore takeover happening, 100% up one side and down the other. And people are like, hey, just join with it. It knows what's best. It just wants stability. No, it doesn't. It's cold-blooded and it hates this country because America stood for liberty. Hadn't been perfect, but you look at the messages in our media, it demonizes everything that we know is good. I mean, my God, the Homeland Security lobbying and now the military being taught Christians, period, are terrorists, next to Al-Qaeda, and then saying you will not talk about your religion to anybody or you'll be court-martialed. That's official. The First Amendment says you can't, as a government, make people worship, but you can't stop anybody from being an atheist, a Christian, being Jewish, Muslim, agnostic, animist, and they can talk about what they want with people when they're out on duty and things. Now, they're not even saying proselytizing now. They're saying you don't talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is insane. And I'm already digressing. LionelMedia.com. By the way, I haven't even talked about this because it happened when I was on the road. George Jones, who I love, died. He died like last Friday. And Lionel has commentary on him. He actually knew the possum, old possum, the great supreme possum. And I love George Jones. And he's dead. And I think that man drank as much alcohol as Willie Nelson has smoked weed. Willie turned 80. Just days after that, I tweeted out some photos of Willie and I. And some of the anti-gunners were like, there's no way you know him, you liar, you conspiracy theorist, that's Photoshop. You're right, it doesn't exist. Lionel, you were getting the Second Amendment as a lawyer and as a newsman over there at Pix 11 in New York, and you're also, of course, on some of the biggest radio talk stations there as well. And people can see those videos at pix.com/ammo. But looking at this, I want to talk about the response you got as well. What do you make as a lawyer and as a former top prosecutor in Florida? What do you make of it, this tactic of stonewalling, where they just keep saying it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist, and then when they're caught that it does exist, they go, you're discredited. It exists, but it's not nefarious, and then they stare and laugh at you. Who is that targeted at? Because it doesn't work on us, and I don't think it works on anybody else either. I think it's just mainly a way to never even acknowledge, so we're busy just going, hey, you're lying, instead of clapping the cuffs on them. What do you make of all this?
What's interesting about this, Alex, is first of all, you have a number of people who, for the first time in their lives, are dealing with the notion of weapons for the first time. And you have to have some kind of rudimentary understanding in terms of the vernacular and names, automatic versus semi-automatic, and that sort of thing. When you tell people this, you can say, let me see if I can break this down for you. And you've mentioned this as well. When you talk about the amount of ammunition that is being, and by the way, it's here, it's going to Artesia, what is it, New Mexico, the federal training center. But you have enough ammo. Hollow point, which isn't even used in war, by the way, much more expensive. So this notion of target practice is specious because it costs more money. You don't waste money on that. But we have $2 billion plus, and this was in February. God knows what the number is when I first mentioned this. Based upon the numbers of bullets that were used and rounds that were used in Fallujah and the height of the Iraq War, about 5.5 or so million rounds per month. This is enough rounds to allow and to basically arm a continuous war for like 27 years. So then when you say, now all I'm doing is asking a question. I'm just asking. That's my middle name, Alex. I'm just asking. I'm stupid. Why does the Social Security Administration or the Marine Fisheries want this amount of ammunition? Not only that, forget the assault weapons and armored vehicles. Why? One of two things a stupid person may come up with. Number one, the government knows something we don't know. God forbid that ever happening. Maybe there's some kind of unrest that I wish we know about. Okay, fine. Or two, it's trying to buy up every hollow point bullet.
They're doing both, and because they know they're going to collapse the economy. And so we know, but they never want to have that debate. They want us to be caught flat-footed. So,
but here's the thing, and this is the most important. When you talk to people and you use as a basis for your saying, and I say, that the rudiments of the Second Amendment is this protection Remember, and Heller was the case that basically established it as a right of you to possess a firearm. But even prior to that, it dealt with assault weapons, again, to prevent a rogue government or insurrection or rebellion and what have you.
Absolutely. It's not there for Easter bunny hunting.
Exactly. It's not for hunting. It's not for camping. And it's not for even self-protection. But when somebody asks the question, wait a minute, what would ever make you think that this great country that we love, it's not the country, it's governments in charge, people who stand behind the aegis of, the government, that our great seal. But what would ever make you think that? And I would say, to the untrained eye, somebody who really was a, quote, conspiracy theorist, which is my favorite. Don't forget what Gore Vidal said. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy analyst. So what happens was, you would say, it would lead one to think something is up. Now, when you come home, as an analogy, and you're late, and your wife says, where are you? Where were you? And you say, none of your business, I'm going to bed. You have just created the controversy. You might be at church, but by
and you've got lipstick yes, on your face and your zipper's down.
Among the other accoutrements of a dalliance. Now, so that's that. The next thing people have to understand is this much. The Second Amendment, and by the way, the anti-Second Amendment wing, I've got to mention this. On April the 15th, the Boston Marathon, isn't it amazing how this group of marionettes went out almost in queue saying, these people have to be right-wing. By the way, I'm neither right nor left. You know and I know the left-right paradigm is an illusion. But
exactly. But day one, they're saying it's going to be right-wingers, and then the guys they supposedly catch, they act like they want dead, and they have intelligence agency connections, and there's a drill, and then they have martial law in the city pointing guns saying, come out of your house, and then we're not supposed to say that's martial law, Lionel.
Please, but I did another video called, What Does Martial Law Look Like? You see, one of the things that people forget, and it's one of the worst things that we as a civilization, as a great country, suffer from, is this notion of American exceptionalism. We look at other countries and we say, that can't happen here. When you see banks implode, when you see bank runs, when you see riots and people burning things in Greece, that can't happen here. Things are great. The Dow hit 15,000. Hey, everything's terrific. The moment you think that, that's the problem. So now we look at this. Let me also say something before I forget, and you've mentioned this so many times, and I have screamed wanting to talk to you about this. Do you know that when I prosecuted, the part of all the divisions, misdemeanor, traffic, felony, homicide, the department, the area that made me lose sleep at night was juvenile. I saw something 30 years ago of children being taken away from parents, which led to this. And I knew this, bear with me. What's interesting about governments, it could be any government, is that you never do something, you never attack head on. You basically accomplish what you want using a different fiction or a different mechanism to it.
Exactly. They'll say it's one thing, but it's really another. And you're talking about them going after this hunger to get kids because then federal funds kick in. Then they can sell them to the adoption agency. And it really is a form of child kidnapping. But is that why you got out of prosecuting? Because I think you mentioned some of this to me in private.
What happened was, for example, they started to take kids away, and all of a sudden they said, you, Alex Jones, are on the child abuse watch list or whatever it was. We called it the hit parade. And you would say, well, how do I get off it? Don't know. It's not a conviction. This is our administrative. Yeah, but it's on forever. How do I was wrongfully. I'm sorry, you're on. You're stuck. Okay, next, jump to the future. Terror watch list. Terror watch list. I one time interviewed the mother of a kid named like Joseph Smith, and we're not talking the Mormons, but Joseph Douglas or something. Kid was 8 years old and we're on this list. You can't get off the list. How did I get on the list? Sorry, you're tough. You're out. Next, weapons. We're not going to go out and just take your guns. We'll put you on a list. And what happens is you're seeing this more and more and more. You're seeing this watch list. The same way, Alex, and this is another thing, and I don't want to bore people, but these people are very clever. Rather than pass legislation and go through the usual, the troika, this balance of power, separation of powers, the president now, through the unitary executive, comes up with things like PDDs and executive orders and you name it, all different types of...
And it all circumvents in the bureaucracy, and it's totally illegal. Look at this article. Democrats move to exploit terror watch list in new attack on Second Amendment. They've said for 5 years their plan. Now they're saying, we don't even need a bill now. We'll just put you on a list and say you can't own a gun and say why not, just like the terror watch list, or if you're on the list, you then can't own guns. I mean, that is the definition of a tyranny, and you add military on the streets and people disappearing, you're in a hot martial law.
Listen, Alex, I'm in New York. There was a time, you know,
you have stop and frisk like 300,000 times a year. Yeah, it's incredible.
I mean, this is a great point of contention. Do you know that in New York, every square inch is under surveillance like you cannot believe. Let me tell you something else. I mentioned this for you last time I spoke with you. My dream one day, if you said you want to be in government, I'd say yes. I want to be in a new position created for me. It's called psychologist general, not attorney general.
Yeah, I remember that.
Psychologist. What I want to do is I want to create the memes and the collective psychology, macro psychology, if you will, of a people. What happens is, as you know, one of the doctrines, as an old psych major myself, is habituation. You put on a watch, you wear it, it's heavy at first. Next thing you know, the novel stimuli are not novel anymore. When you are ground down, it's learned helplessness, when you become, I use the word all the time, sheeple, when you know, there's an expression, it's like trying to herd cats.
That's what they're doing. They are training us to be prisoners.
What happens is you are being habituated. You are told everything from sugary drinks to trans fats to sodium to the size of cups. Little kids now, and there was a school I read today where they were pulling them out based upon their BMI, pulling them out of school, corralling them, pointing at them, humiliating. They call them fat.
No, they're training you that you have no space, that you're bad, that you're a suspect, that you're evil, and the state and the gangs of bureaucrats, they're the new class. They're reestablishing a class system through a government and corporate structure. It's unbelievable. And then getting gangs together in the new economy that will feed off of you, who are taught that's how they make a living. We're going into the prison hell economy.
Well, it's funny you say that. Also look back. One of the classic experiments, the Milgram experiment. It was at the time when Eichmann was on trial, and people asked, how could these people do this? How could people during Nazi Germany? By the way, I don't want to be a Godwin, theory violator here, but you have to look at history. How do people? Listen, Germany was the height of civilization.
How do they kill people in death panels now? How do they now say kill babies up to age 3? Because they found in the Milgram experiment in 1961, and at several universities did similar studies, they found over 90% of people.
Right, the Stanford prison came later on. So what I'm trying to say
they would kill, well, tell people what they would do.
Well, the Milgram experiment was basically, it was at Yale, and what happened was they took people off the street and said, we'll give you a few bucks if you could be a part of a science experiment. And people came in, the guy with the white coat came in, and they said, there was a person behind
They did it for $4. $4 they would kill people. Guys, type in Milgram experiment. It's on Wikipedia. I want to show them the actual documents. Go ahead.
But what happens is they said, now listen, this is for science. Remember, give me a higher order. Terrorism, science, freedom, whatever your goal is. And what we want you to do is, these people have gotten an answer wrong. We want you to give them a shock of electricity and increase the severity of the electricity as they get answers wrong. Alex, it got so bad. Of course, nobody was actually hurt, but the experimenter who was hired to do this didn't know this. It got so bad that people were screaming and then stopped. Either they were in a coma or dead, as far as this person knew, and he kept shocking them.
Because an authority figure told them to do it.
Precisely, and it was for a greater good. I can suspend my own...
No. We went out and did things where we said, we're going to bring Nazi rule to America for the good and to get the guns, and most Californians signed it. We said Nazi Orwellian rule. This is a petition for Nazis to run America, and they signed it.
You said the great dihydrogen monoxide routine. Years ago, there was an apocryphal story from my native state of Florida where George Smathers was running against Claude Pepper. They called him Red Pepper. And in the Panhandle, they say it didn't happen, but I kind of like the story. George Smathers supposedly said in a southern drawl, did you know that Claude Pepper's sister is a thespian? And she matriculates And she's, what? They didn't know, these poor panhandle Florida. The point is, you can gauge anything. Now, let me stop for a second. What is all this?
And that wasn't even libel or slander because she was an actress. Yeah.
Right, in New York, you know, even worse. So here's the bottom.
She's a thespian that is in New York.
Here is the best one. Bradhaw, whom I love more and more now, thank God for YouTube, said that it is an article of faith, an actual article of faith to live in this country, that you must deny any conspiracy theories. And here is the most beautiful word in the world. And I love the way somebody appropriated this. Alex, there are people in federal prison doing life sentences on conspiracies. Conspiracies are the confederation between two guilty people to bring something about. If you act alone, you can't conspire with yourself, and you can't conspire with a cop.
And conspiracy's bad because it shows it's ultra premeditated.
But what happens, yes, it means it's coordinated, it's confederated, it's conspired, but what it means also, in today's vernacular, in our lexicon, the neologism means you're insane. You're nuts.
Exactly. So if you say powerful groups ever conspire, which is the whole history of man, it doesn't exist. I mean, the devil's greatest trick is he doesn't exist, and they've got the public convinced, part of them, that there's no government corruption.
And recently, this is interesting, remember, left or right, Fox, MSDNC, doesn't really matter. Whoever's the president, they just switch partners. Remember, the people right now, the loudest civil libertarians are in Fox because Obama's in power. When Bush was doing the Patriot Act, it was the opposite. So it doesn't really matter. It's like Stephen's still saying, change partners. But what's happening right now is we're seeing these words used interchangeably to stop thinking and to let you know or make you think maybe something's wrong.
Hey, Lionel, let me stop you. We got to go to break. I'm going to come back and do something special. And then maybe have you do 5 minutes with David Knight, who's going to take over. And I want to get you back very soon. It's been too long, probably almost a year since you've been on. LionelMedia.com. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com. The new magazine is in. The new May issue. It will sell out quick. Get it. All right, final segment in the main transmission, but some stations carry the next hour. David Knight's going to be there. Audio and video streams at Infowars.com. Free to everybody at Infowars.com/listen. And also via prisonplanet.com. Lionel do 5 more minutes with him to finish up. I'm finishing up here at the end because I wanted to be able to talk about the hotel I've been at and some of the history of that and be able to show TV viewers or people watching at Infowars.com/listen some of what I'm talking about. I'm in Hot Springs, Arkansas. I was going to come up here for like 3 days. One of my children got sick on the drive up, and so we didn't really get any vacation. I thought, why not just broadcast from here and be able to exercise and spend time with the family. It's a great town. Just since I came here when I was a child, most of it shut down and rotting, and almost all the small businesses have shut down, and they say it's because the economy, tourism just isn't like it was. The Arlington is an old, great hotel built almost 100 years ago. I am in the Al Capone suite. Al Capone, they had National Baseball Camp here. It was one of the biggest gambling centers in the country as well. And Al Capone lived here about 3 to 6 months out of the year where I'm sitting. The Arlington Hotel, great place to visit, folks, while it's still here. The Arlington Hotel is very historical, and they lent us the last few days the Al Capone suite, and didn't even say we had to plug them, but I am plugging the Arlington Hotel. And again, there's a lot of nice restaurants, a lot of art here, a lot of really nice people, but you see most of the buildings are empty now. And so it's a piece of American history with the Ozark Mountains and hot volcanic water that comes out in the baths. It's very well known to have, with the Native Americans and the National Baseball League, you name it, they have healing effects. And I'm showing TV viewers a shot out of Al Capone's window. He picked this here on the 4th floor, out on the edge. It's an 11-story building, so that he could stake out and watch what was coming in and out of the hotel. So this is where he tended to hang out even more sometimes than Chicago. And right there, that building was the first model in Superman able to jump a building in a single bound. And my 5-year-old thought it was the Vampire States building. So that's a very, very famous town, Hot Springs, Arkansas, and government's not going to be able to revive it. People need to revive it and revive small towns and shop locally as much as you can. Globalism is what is destroying this country. This is about as picturesque and as good a place you could live in the country. Just tropical plants everywhere. It's like a rainforest here. And I thought I would give you a review of some of that. In fact, Richard, maybe go shoot the Army-Navy Rehabilitation Center. Some of it's still open down there. You, just other Gothic, or not even Gothic, you call them Art Deco buildings built in the 20s and 30s, most of them. A very historic place. I'm leaving right now, so nobody needs to come to the hotel, folks. I'll be gone in 5 minutes. I'm walking out right now. It takes 5 minutes to break this down. I've probably had 15 groups of people figure out where I'm at and be sitting waiting for me in the bar, again, to show you how big the show is. I'm not bragging. No brag, just fact. I'm saying that shows we're waking people up. I walk down the street, every fifth person comes over here. It's all over the country like this. We have strength. We're a lot bigger than the globalists will admit. And no matter what they do to me, they can politically destroy me, destroy my name, whatever, except they're so discredited they can't. It's kind of freaking them out. They can physically kill me or set me up, but the idea goes forward. There's so many innocents being persecuted and hurt by these people right now. We have a responsibility to continue to fight against this global mafia. And, of course, Al Capone was a lower-level mafia who stepped on the Rockefeller toes and ran Arkansas, so they sent Winthrop to take it over and shut it down and monopolize it like West Virginia. But there's old Al Capone, and I'm sitting right where his desk was. This is just how it was when he was here. It's a different desk. They got all the photos of him, so I'm sitting where Al Capone would hang out, and it's pretty amazing. Now, 4th hour is coming up. Some stations carry it. If they don't, we'll see you back tomorrow. But the audio streams, video streams for everybody are at Infowars.com/listen. And please support the broadcast, buying books, videos, the high-quality ProPure water filters. Visit the Seed Center, all of it, InfoWarsStore.com, and pray for a safe trip home for us, folks. Pray for us. We need it.
Well, it is Alex Jones' show, but I'm David Knight, setting in for him for this last hour of Overdrive. And we've got on the phone Lionel, who Alex was just talking to, and he's going to talk to us a little bit more about this ammunition situation that's going on. Lionel, are you still there?
David, I'm here, sir. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure talking to you. You know, when you were talking about the ammunition stuff and you brought up the Milgram experiment, you know, there was that French TV show just a couple of years ago called The Game of Death. Are you familiar with that?
Vaguely.
Yeah, they did it as a documentary, and they found that 82% of the people that they brought in, and they basically had actors. They had a real elaborate game show where they replicated the Milgram experiment. They found that 82% of the people were willing to pull that lever. And again, it's just an appeal to authority. Same sort of thing. You know, we look at this and we question why people in the media are not asking questions, whether it's about the Boston bombing, not questioning details there. They're not questioning details about the bullets. And we wonder what's going on with that. And they're not necessarily been taken into some secret conspiracy. A lot of this is, as Alex had mentioned, they just want to be liked by the authorities. They want to be, you know, given nice pats on the back and say, you can come to the next press conference and we'll give you a question.
It's one of the things which is the most fascinating. You know, I never ceased to be fascinated, David, by human emotion and psychology, if you will, and psychopathology and how we're nuts. In essence, you know, one of the things that's interesting is that we as humans believe that we're different from animals, that we have lost the idea of I hope you can't hear this yapping dog somewhere. I'm gonna do something criminal. Anyway, but we as animals have this cortex. We basically have mammalian brains, but what makes us different is this cortex. There's this thinking and emotion and cognition and planning, and we think we're above everything. But there's a part of us that's very, very base. There's animalistic. And one of the things that we do, like other animals, is that we habituate. You know, there's a balance. You, David, have to get along and yet be bold. And there's a balance. If you constantly fought the system, things would not work out well for you. You cannot run red lights. You cannot show up late to work. You have, right. There's order. So we kind of submit. But in our minds, we say, okay, that makes sense. Here's the part that gets me. When you see a terrorist, somebody that we've identified, translation, somebody else. Right-wing fundamentalist, somebody else. Mm-hmm. Somebody else. It's the other guy. When they do something and we say they're evil, I don't think there has ever been anybody on this planet behind a cause who said, we're evil. Even the famous berserkers, I don't think they said, we're evil. Mm-hmm. Want to join our force? We're evil. They say, we are right. And this target, whoever they are, they're wrong, they're evil in their own mind, and both sides, and they will be able to justify it one way or the other. So humans must be possessed by the idea that what they're doing is right. Number two, when they're scared, if you want to scare somebody and you pose the idea of terrorism or crime or drugs or whatever it is, people will do anything. They will also give up things. Another thing which is interesting, which is another aspect, David, which I find so amazing, we need to re-instruct people on what the government is and isn't. The government is not the Washington Monument and Abe Lincoln and the Congress and Old Glory. And the government today are people who hide behind the aegis, the firewall of our beloved country. Give you an example. I think unions are a wonderful thing. Now, they're subject to abuse, but the idea of the union get rid of child labor, the union give us 40-hour work week, the union, very, very good, collective bargaining. Now, to the person who saw the Teamsters perhaps become corrupted, they said, unions are bad. No, they're not. These people are bad. Governments are kind of like that. You have to keep an eye on them.
We're just about out of time. Thank you for joining us, Lionel. And that website where people can see your videos is Pixel 11. Is that correct? Pixel 11. All right, Alex Jones is on his way home from Hot Springs, Arkansas. He's been doing live remotes from there for the last several days. Pray for his safe return. We wish him well. I'm David Knight, standing in for him. We just had Lionel on, and his website is Pix11, that's Pix11.com. You can go there and see some of his analysis. And one of the things I liked that Lionel said when he was talking to Alex was that we're not conspiracy theorists, we're conspiracy analysts. You know, we don't have theories. We've got some facts that we want to analyze here. And back on this last weekend, Rolling Stones put out an article. It was Everything is Rigged, the biggest price-fixing scandal ever. And they said the Illuminatis were amateurs. The second huge financial scandal of the year reveals the real international conspiracy that there is no price that big banks can't fix. And they apologized to conspiracy theorists about that. And one of the things that they're pointing out is, as you may remember, about a year ago, we had the LIBOR scandal, which was gigantic. It was between 3 and 16 banks that were manipulating global interest rates. If you ever get a variable rate interest loan, you'll see that it is tied to the LIBOR index, and that is supposed to be a free market index. But these few large banks were colluding together to fix that interest rate to their advantage. Now we've got another scandal that's breaking. And this one centers around an organization of brokers in London at a firm called, or an organization called ICAP, I-C-A-P. And it also now includes about 15 of the world's largest banks, the same usual suspects. And they are also fixing interest rate swaps to their advantage. This involves $379 trillion, which is 100 times the size of the U.S. government's budget. This is a gigantic amount of money. And when we were speculating about, why is the Homeland Security buying up so much ammunition? Are they buying it to prepare for a civil war because they're expecting financial collapse? Or are they trying to dry up the supply of ammunition? And as we believe, it's a little bit of both. But consider this. This is out of the Rolling Stones article, and you really need to see this article. It's about 8 or 9 pages printed out. Listen to this. 2 of America's top law enforcement officials, Attorney General Eric Holder and former Justice Department Criminal Division Chief Lanny Breuer, confessed that it is dangerous to prosecute offending banks because they're simply too big. Now listen to this quote from these guys. Making arrests, they said, might lead to, quote, collateral consequences, unquote, in the economy. In other words, Eric Holder and Justice Department Criminal Division Chief Lanny Breuer are admitting that they're afraid of prosecuting criminal banks because they're afraid that they will tank the economy. So think about that when you look at these gigantic ammo purchases. And here's one other thing from the article. They explain how this ICAP scandal is working. And if you ever saw the movie The Sting with Robert Redford and Paul Newman, think back to that. Remember in that movie how, and they actually kind of use an analogy similar to that, like racetrack, knowing who's going to be the winner in a horse race a little bit before the winner is announced. And if you remember that movie, They basically set up a giant scam where they had a bookie area where this fat daddy was going to make a very large bet, and they were delaying the announcing of the race. So basically they were listening in one spot, delaying it, and then announcing it a little bit later. And they were able to know just a little bit in advance by delaying that maybe about 5 minutes. They knew who the winner was going to be, and they placed their bets accordingly and broke the other guy because he thought he was hearing it in real time. That is essentially what these people at ICAP were doing. They were delaying the data by just a little bit before it went out and placing their bets, making money on these interest rate swaps. So much so that these 20 or so brokers that are involved in this ICAP scandal, they called the unit Treasure Island because they were making so much money. Now, the question is, will anything be done if Eric Holder and other people like that are afraid of the banks? No, probably not. And they are going to get hundreds of trillions with a T, hundreds of trillions of dollars of money in these scams. And if we don't like it, they just might crash the economy. So that's another reason they may be stockpiling bullets. Now, along the lines of gun control, as we mentioned earlier, Obama has said that this is really just round one. He said in Mexico that last time they got significant gun control passed, it took them 6, 7, 8 tries. And the irony of this is that he's doing this in Mexico, and that he's talking about how our guns are the root cause of the crime in Mexico. And that's nothing to sneeze at what's going on in Mexico. They have far more people have died in the drug wars in Mexico than have died in Afghanistan. And so it's a tremendous amount of violence that's going on there. And yet our Attorney General was involved in illegal gun running scandal, the Fast and Furious down there. And now they're using that as a pretext, as an excuse to take away our Second Amendment rights. Why isn't he locked up? And what we saw in the run-up to the election, we saw that some Republicans did come after him. Why did they stop at the election? Well, I think, in my personal opinion, they stopped because there are connections in this that go beyond Eric Holder, that go beyond the Obama administration. There's a bureaucratic connection through the ATF, going back into previous administration of the Bush administration. So this is why the Republicans, in my opinion, are not going to follow this through and lock Eric Holder up as they should. They should at least get him out of office because he's a criminal attorney general. And if you don't think that he's criminal and wrong because of Fast and Furious, just look at what he did this last week. And this is something that we didn't cover, that didn't get much attention because this happened as the bombings were being investigated. We've had a couple of House bills. We had the Ohio House as well as the Missouri House have been working on bills that would nullify any unconstitutional gun control laws coming out of Washington. Now, we already had a similar bill pass in Kansas and be signed into law, and that bill went into effect April the 25th. And Attorney General Eric Holder, the very next day after that went into effect, sent the governor of Kansas, Governor Brownback, a threatening letter saying that the Kansas law, quote unquote, purports, that was Eric Holder's word, that it purports to override federal law, saying that under the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, Kansas cannot prevent federal employees and officials from carrying out their official responsibilities, and a state certainly may not criminalize the exercise of federal responsibilities because that law had a provision that made it a felony for federal bureaucrats to come in and violate the Constitution, as it should be. And so Eric Holder goes back and looks at the Supremacy Clause, but what does the Supremacy Clause say? Well, the Supremacy Clause says that the Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, are the supreme law of the land. So if you write a law that is not in pursuance of the clearly stated guidelines of the Constitution, then it is not a supremacy. The Supremacy Clause cannot be invoked. So we want to take some of your calls and see what you have to say about some of these things and let us know what you think about gun control, about the giant bank failures. And we'll also talk a little bit here about what's going on in the Pentagon, where it looks like they're purging Christians out of the military. Let's go to our first call here. We've got Mark in Colorado. You've been holding on for a long time. What have you got?
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of talk about the same points you were making. The Constitution seems fragile, and the background of it, I think, of its fall and just in general, is due to the Pledge of Allegiance, actually, I think. And just the main quality of that being the fact that we don't have that many unifying pledges between peoples, and that was a cultural thing for us as well as other things. Anything you'll see in the news these days is all about separation. It's all about really dividing us into tribes and trying to take us down like that.
Well, you know, when you're talking about pledging allegiance to a flag, what about the pledges that all of our elected officials take to uphold the Constitution and defend it? I mean, you know, how can they justify these infringements on the Second Amendment? How can they justify these infringements on the First Amendment that the Pentagon is doing? They're allowing that to happen. That is a clear infringement upon people's First Amendment rights. You know, we have a freedom of religion, not a freedom from religion. And when they try to turn it into a freedom from religion, they are impinging on people's freedom of speech as well as their freedom of religion. I think that's why the founders wisely put both freedom of speech and freedom of religion in the same amendment, because they really are two sides of the same coin.
Definitely. And I think if I just had one message for like teachers and just everyone in general, if you want to say the pledge or the Lord's Prayer or whatever, feel free. I mean, just because our government says that it's not sanctioned or that you don't have to do it, I feel like that empowers it a little bit. At least empowers the individual to have to do it and you know, find time on themselves.
Absolutely. If you don't exercise your freedoms, you will lose them. That's absolutely for sure. Thank you, Mark. Let's go to Joshua in California. Joshua?
Yeah, hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. Hey, I had some questions that I want to bring up about religion, but since you guys are kind of on the topic of the Constitution, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand, particularly of the history of our Constitution the way it is and how the framework was set up, a lot of people think of George Washington as being the first president when we actually had other forms of government before that here in this country. And even before that, like, it was really, you know, more under British rule and so on. But
the Articles of Confederation you're talking about?
Yeah, and the first and second congressional, what was it, the Congress or something? So it was basically like those forms of government. And then I know they tried the Federalists, but then there was issues with people having to be unanimous and agreeing with something. So they were like, well, what are we going to do? And so they came up with this idea, and one of the things I know, like in my contest entry, I kind of explain a little bit of like that, because I think that this information is out there. It's just not been put together for people. A lot of people think of like the Federal Reserve as being this, you know, really bad entity and all, and it all started because of that, but they don't really understand what happened during Lincoln's time when they started introducing the Legal Tender Act and then the National Banking Acts at that time as well.
Right, yeah. So, tyranny has a long history, and it creeps up on us very, very slowly, and we have to watch that and be aware of history, and we see it not only repeating itself, but intensifying itself. We'll be right back with some more calls. All right, I'm David Knight, and we're back here on the Alex Jones Show. We're going to be going to Julie in Texas to talk to us a little bit about banking. And if you just tuned in, we were talking about this article from Rolling Stones talking about the LIBOR and now the even bigger ICAP scandal that's breaking, and quoting U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder, saying that they dare not make arrests of bankers because that might lead to collateral consequences in the economy. He's afraid of them. He's afraid of the bankers. And they've got, just in this ICAP scandal, we're talking about a figure of money that's $379 trillion, trillion with a T. That's 100 times the federal government's budget. So it's a huge issue. Julie in Texas, what do you think about that?
Hey, it's Julie. Thank you so much for taking my call. First of all, I just want to thank y'all for everything you do. I think you guys are awesome. You do such a good job with backing up everything that you report on. And that article was a very lengthy but informative article, and anybody that can get through that can really understand how literally just a team of 20 people are controlling the price of everything across the globe. It's
Absolutely.
Pretty remarkable.
Absolutely. It's just amazing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Also, sir, on a side note, I'm a local writer and reporter in Austin, Texas. And I actually have been trying to get in touch with your team. It's pretty much my dream and ambition at this point to work for the Infowars team. I love what y'all do. I actually interviewed with your team last week for the magazine.
Super.
And I thought it went really great, and I was just waiting this week to hear from them, and I hadn't heard from them yet, so I just thought I'd call in and try to get myself on your radar. And
all right, I'll pass that information on to them. I know they were really under the gun because to make the magazine as current as possible and to really hit these hot breaking issues, you know, just as we're getting ready to go to press of the magazine, the Boston Marathon bombing happened, and we really felt that it was imperative to do major rewrites in the magazine to make it as timely and as current and to address the whole issue, especially of false flags and the history of false flags. So they did a lot of rewriting under the gun to try to get that thing out, and they did a fantastic job with this month's issue. Simon in Florida, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, what have you got for us, Simon?
Well, I'm interested to know why no one's reporting on these pictures on the internet about these first responders and these actors. I mean, if you look up on the internet, are you just a believer, or do you think? There's plenty of websites that are showing pictures that look like they're staging the event, putting prosthetics on Bowman, the guy in the wheelchair. Later you see where, and you'll see there's this black girl in front of him that's later on a stretcher, and Bowman's laying on the ground and nobody's attending to him.
Well,
and
it's
later in the scene,
it's a difficult thing, you know, and when you look at, there are so many different issues with this. One of the things that we wanted to focus on is the fact that there was a bombing drill. I remember when it was breaking on a Monday, and Jakari Jackson and I were here, and that's the question we were asking. And as we started hearing reports coming in of there being a drill and then paying a special attention to the finish line and that sort of thing, we all wanted Dan Bradhaw to ask the question that he did ask at the press conference if there was a bombing drill. And they would neither confirm nor deny that, because that is what we have always seen as the hallmark of these false flags, that they would have a drill going on just like they did at 9/11, same exact scenario, same exact day and time, so that people don't know what's going on for sure. The first responders don't know if it's real or if it's a drill. And it also provides cover for them if they're caught faking something. So we felt that was really important. We've also looked at the contradictions and what's going on just as a crime scene reporting, looking at things like the color of the backpack. What's the probability of them having a backpack inside another one? If the younger brother put a black backpack inside of a white backpack, why didn't the mastermind of all this, his older brother, why didn't he do something like that? So we're looking and questioning a lot of these things that are put out there that were fed. Now, of course, the question is, certainly they do have crisis actors, and there are some questionable pictures that we see coming up there. But it's always a difficult thing to pin down something like that and to prove that. And so, you know, there's always going to be a core of something that is real in any event. And they may elaborate on that. They may sex that up for the cameras. They may fictionalize part of it. But at its core is a real explosion. And so we have to take a look at that and really kind of go with what we can absolutely prove. And there's so many different areas on which we can attack the official story and look at what's going on in a national agenda and look at what's going on an international agenda. And we'll be right back. I'm David Knight. All right, I'm David Knight here on the Alex Jones Show. Alex is on his way back from Hot Springs, Arkansas. And he'll be back in studio for the Sunday show, I imagine. And he's been doing a live remote from there, as you probably know if you've been listening. And we were talking earlier about, he was talking with Lionel about the different things that government has done in terms of purging Christians and, you know, taking guns and then censoring people's freedom of speech when it comes to religion and that sort of thing, as we've seen that happen historically in Soviet Union and other places. You know, it was P.J. O'Rourke that said Democrats think that God is Santa Claus, and Republicans think that he's God. And he said the difference is Santa Claus doesn't exist and God does. But, you know, I think government really does think that it's God, and it's a jealous God. It doesn't want to have any other gods before it. And that's especially true when you're talking about Jesus. You know, they have a particular, you look at what the Air Force Academy is doing, and they basically have set up this place where they can have this pagan worship circle and everything, but they're now talking about court-martialing people who share their faith, even chaplains who do that. And look at the way the government is operating. You know, what are the three attributes of God? He's omnipotent, all-powerful, right? Well, that's what they're doing. They want all power, all weapons, all guns to belong to them. God is omniscient. They want to know everything, just like God. And they want to be omnipresent. They want to be just like Big Brother in every aspect of your life, whether it's telling you what size soft drink you can have or anything. Everything has to be done at their permission. It's just amazing when you look at it. But these people really do act as if they're God. And so there is definitely a spiritual component to this, a very dark spiritual component to what's going on here. I want to take a phone call now from Scott in Vermont. Scott, are you there?
Yes. Hi, David.
Hey, how you doing, Scott?
All right. Yeah, I don't know if Lionel, I used to listen to his radio show years ago, National AM show. I don't know if he mentioned to you that he was a former prosecutor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and well, he had no problem apparently putting people away for victimless crimes like marijuana. But
that's interesting.
Unlike Judge Napolitano, who kind of, I've seen him on YouTube kind of repenting of that, saying that the war on drugs is a scam, and he's sorry for putting people in jail for, you know, victimless crimes like that. But anyways, you mentioned the supremacy clause. It also says that the judges in Article 6, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and judges in all the land are bound to it.
Yes.
Well, guess what happened? Another judge recently here in Bradhaw, Vermont, in the case of the anti-nuke protesters, the so-called grannies who stood at the gate of blocking the gate of the nuke plant here in Vermont Yankee. They finally, after doing it many times, they finally prosecuted them and put them on the trial. They didn't want to spend the money over time or whatever they finally did, and they tried to enter the Bill of Rights of the Constitution into evidence, and the judge denied it. Well, they should have brought up the Constitution, and it doesn't mean the states don't have rights, but it does say that the judges in the land are bound to the state, the supreme law of the land.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we need to make sure that we need to really push on fully informed juries, because we've got judges telling jurors that they don't have both the right and the duty to judge not only the facts of the case, but the law itself. And that has always been not only the tradition of English and American law, but it's also written into the state constitutions in many, many states. And I interviewed a fellow, the New Jersey weed man, who basically represented himself because most lawyers are afraid to tell juries about the fully informed jury issue. And so he represented himself, and he had two trials. The first one, he put up a quote directly out of the New Jersey Constitution and said that jurors could judge the law being a good law or not, as well as just the facts of the case. He never said that he hadn't been in possession of the marijuana, and the first judge said, you take that down or you're going to jail for contempt. But they had already seen it, and he had a hung jury of 7-5. They retried him on that. The next judge let him just leave that on his desk, and he did, and he was acquitted 12-0, and they can't come after him again. So that's a very powerful thing. The other thing we have to be concerned about is this whole idea that judges, the Supreme Court, is invested with power to be the final arbiter of what's going on, whether a law is constitutional or not. And Jefferson spoke directly to that because he was involved with Marbury versus Madison. And he said, the question whether the judges are invested with exclusive authority to decide on the constitutionality of a law has been heretofore a subject to consideration with me in the exercise of official duties. Certainly, there is not a word in the Constitution that gives that power to them more than it does to the executive or legislative branches. And he said, to think that judges are the ultimate arbiters of all constitutional questions is a dangerous doctrine indeed, and would place us under the despotism of an oligarchy. And then I won't read the rest of this quote, but he goes on and even says that if we accept that, the Constitution becomes a suicide pact, because what we've done is we've turned over all of the power to 9 politically appointed judges who have their own special interests and biases and can be bribed or have other interests that they, influence them. We dare not take the clear Constitution, the clear wording of the Constitution, and turn that over to the whims of a political judiciary. Are you there, Scott?
So it's a balance of powers. And also about Eric Holder, that's something that the left and the right have common ground upon. I was listening to the radio show. I tried to call in with my own senator, Bernie Sanders. He's a socialist, but at least he voted against the Patriot Act and the NDAA, unlike our other senator, Pat Leahy, who helped co-write the Patriot Act. And he's supposed to be seen as a champion of our liberties, and the sheep will fawn all over him for some reason.
Well, you know, you were talking about prosecutors and former prosecutors. I've talked to Jim Gierak, who was for decades, he was a prosecutor in Chicago, prosecuting people for drug crimes and things like that. But he now is part of an organization called LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. And we've talked to him a couple of times. And one of the things that he told us, and this directly addresses what Obama is saying in Mexico. Obama wants to blame the violence in Mexico, and there's a tremendous amount of violence there in the drug war. He wants to blame it on the fact that they're getting guns from the United States when Eric Holder, his attorney general, was involved in illegally shipping guns to Mexico. But the real issue is not guns. The real issue is drug prohibition. And Jim Gierak said that the Chicago police chief has said that 80% of the shootings in Chicago are due to the drug war. And that's what's really going on in Mexico. That's the root of the violence in Mexico, is a drug war. And if you look at the root of the drugs and the drug war, that goes right back to the American CIA and our American involvement in places like Afghanistan. That had nearly, the supply of poppy-based drugs had dropped to only 10% of the world's supply coming out of Afghanistan after we got in there. And you can go back and look at the New York Times, and you can see them. You can see soldiers helping poppy farmers grow this stuff and ship it out. Now Afghanistan accounts for 90% of the poppy-based drugs like heroin and cocaine. That's after the United States military went in there, after we helped to do that. And the CIA has been dependent on that drug trade for a long time for money to run their black ops. If you go back and you look at the drug war, you see the roots of it, and you see that it's not only just the drug wars, but it's prohibition in general. Go back and look at alcohol prohibition and look at how it corrupted the judiciary. And that's why so many former retired prosecutors like Jim Gierak, as well as retired cops, are now speaking out against prohibition. Let's go to Jim in Connecticut. Jim, how are you?
Good. How are you today?
Doing good. I understand you're with We Are Change?
Yeah, We Are Change Connecticut. We Are Change CT.org.
Great.
It's our website. And I just wanted to shout out to the Connecticut listeners that it's time to get off your butts, start making action, stop just posting on Facebook and Twitter. That's not where the battle's at. The battle's on the street. We're looking for people to get involved. Come up and join up with us at wearechangeCT.org. And just get on the street, man, because there's a lot going on. We've been doing a lot in the last 6 months. We've confronted Madeleine Albright. She still thinks it's okay that they killed over 500,000 Iraqis. And it's just
So now you're saying get off of Facebook, get off of Twitter, and get on the street. So you're advocating that people go out and do citizen journalism, right, out on the streets.
Yes, sir. Well, what I noticed a lot I've been involved with the group for about 5 years now in Connecticut. A lot of people want to get involved, but their umbilical cords are still attached to the system, and they just cannot get off the couch and go make action. They're more inclined to repost your articles or whatnot, and that's really not, that's good and all, but you're not targeting the people that you need to, because you're only targeting your friends. And it's the people that don't have Facebook. It's the people that, work 12, 14-hour days that don't get to go home and really listen to what's really happening, just pop on the TV and just watch the mainstream.
You're preaching to the choir when you're talking to your friends on Facebook. Although sometimes you'll be friends casually with somebody and they might not share your political views. And so sometimes that is a pretty good place to hit people with it. But I think it's a real key thing to go out and engage people. And, as you mentioned, you engaged Madeleine Albright again. That's what We Are Change does so well. I really appreciate the work that you're doing there. Let's go to Joe in Kansas. Joe, are you there?
Yes, I am, Dave. Hey, I really appreciate what you said about Jefferson there. Also in that same in the same context, he also prescribed term limits on everybody, President, Senate, representatives, and judicial, because otherwise, as he said, you'll get an oligarchy established.
That's right. And I think Virginia is the only place that I know of that has a single term limit for governor. And I think, that had a lot to do with Jefferson and Madison and, the people who were very, very much aware of the evils of staying in office forever. It was George Washington who essentially set the precedent of just 2 terms. And everybody kind of abided by that until you got to FDR. And then people got afraid that, with so much control of the media, we might have somebody that just might decide that he wanted to be president for life and could actually pull it off. And so that's why they put the amendment to stop that. And yet we have people saying that that ought to be lifted now, that we ought to have people like Obama in forever or George Bush in forever. You had something here about seizure of guns you wanted to talk about.
Well, yes, Governor Brownback.
Mm-hmm.
I was just reading about his response to Eric Holder's letter.
What did he say? Because I haven't seen that response. How did he respond to Holder's letter?
Well, he said Brownback replied in a letter Thursday that Kansans hold dear their right to bear arms and are protecting the state's sovereignty. Secretary of State Chris Colbeck, a former law professor who helped draft the law, accused the nation's top law enforcement officer of blustering over the issue.
Mm-hmm.
People in Kansas have clearly expressed their sovereign will, Brownback said in the conclusion of his letter. It is my hope that upon further review, you will see their right to do so.
Well, Holder's concerned about this because this is breaking in a lot of different places. Like I mentioned, the Ohio House had a bill that got first hearing. The Missouri House passed a stronger bill than the Ohio one that would actually do what Kansas does, not only nullify gun laws. The Missouri one nullifies gun laws passed after January the 1st, 2013, and would make it felonies for federal to attempt to enforce new gun laws. So this kind of stuff is breaking out all over the place, and we see it happening on the marijuana front as well. And what you're seeing here is people exercising the 10th Amendment, and a lot of these reports are coming from the 10th Amendment Center. Go there and take a look at their website. Get educated about that. They are not given, according to the Bill of Rights, anything that is not expressly delegated to the federals is reserved as a power by the states and by the people. And one of the things that the federals are prohibited from doing is having a permanent, perpetual standing army. If you look at Article 1, Section 8, they are not allowed to fund the military for more than 2 years at a time. So that's another thing we ought to be complaining about the NDAA. It's not just the fact that they try to overturn the 6th Amendment, but they're also unconstitutionally extending a standing army funding year after year after year. And we've now got a standing army that's going on since World War II. We've never stood down the army. We just continually build it because that's what the military-industrial complex wants. That's what the bankers want. So it goes all the way back to looking at the core, the body of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8. The Second Amendment just reinforces that and says, oh, and by the way, we're specifically reserving the right to keep and bear arms for individuals. And then goes further in the 10th Amendment and says, and oh, by the way, anything that isn't expressly given to you is reserved to us. So there's so many prohibitions against really the gun laws that we have on the books are an infringement of the Second Amendment. And I guess they figured that since we accept that, that we're going to continue to accept further infringements. But what we need to do is stand firm on that. And we need to start rolling back these other ones. And I don't think it's going to happen in Washington. We're going to have to get people in the states as well as the state houses and state governors to stand firm on this. So hopefully Brownback is going to stand firm on that. Let's go to Cyrus in Michigan. Cyrus, are you there?
Yeah, how are you today, David?
Doing fine.
Hey, David, there's a couple quick topics I want to talk about real quick. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, a longtime listener. You guys discuss a lot about how you're questioning things that you've been fed and things that you've been told, and it seems like you guys try to put together a lot of different resources that are just out there and bring them to people's attention. The thing is that there's a lot of the articles that you guys are pulling together are laced with a lot of intelligence within them, and there's only people that are going to really be able to break that through for you are former intelligence officers. They know and they can really help you. That's probably the article I would take.
Well, I had an an interview earlier this week with Sibel Edmonds. You're talking about former intelligence people. She worked as a translator for the FBI, and she was involved in the area of, she's Turkish, well, she's part Iranian, and but she spoke the Turkish language, and she was an interpreter there. And her area included not only Turkey, but also the Caucasus regions, where Chechnya is involved, and Azerbaijan. And if you look at that area, it's tremendously important strategically because it is geographically contiguous to not only the Soviet Union, but to China. And what the U.S. government was doing was essentially a second version of Gladio, according to Sibel, who had seen documents and had seen what had been happening in these different countries. And she has a really interesting series of videos that she did. That was about 4 hours altogether back in January, talking about how, if you're aware of Operation Gladio, and many of our listeners are, it was an operation that was set up in Europe. And Darren McBreen did a wonderful report with a guy who wrote a book about that and went into great detail on that. Look up that report from Darren McBreen on YouTube and on Prison Planet TV. But basically, they stood that down at the as the Cold War ended, and they were looking around for another enemy, and that's Gladio Part B. And we're going to follow up and talk about that a little bit right after the break. I'm David Knight here, standing in for Alex Jones on the Infowars nightly news. We're here on the info on the Alex Jones radio station. All right, I'm David Knight. I'm here with the Alex Jones Show. Alex is on the road, and he'll be back. He's on his way back to Austin, back to the bunker. And it has been confirmed that this is the Alex Jones Show, not the nightly news, as I started to say. I do that typically, and we were just talking about an interview that I had earlier this week with Sibel Edmonds. The previous caller said that we really needed to get some analysis for people who had worked on the inside, and she is someone that Daniel Ellsberg, who leaked the Pentagon Papers, said that the information that she has about September 11th is a much bigger story than the Pentagon Papers. And I would agree with him. And there's an even bigger story that's breaking, and it's connected to the Boston bombing, and that is, and we talked about this in the interview, so check that out on YouTube, on Prison Planet TV. She connected the dots to Graham Fuller, who was a former CIA head of the region of Turkey and the Caucasus. Also, it just turns out, with an amazing coincidence, was father-in-law to Uncle Ruslan. Remember Uncle Ruslan? Ruslan Tsarnaeva, the guy that threw his nephews onto the bus so quickly and reputed them? Well, it turns out that the biggest CIA guy in the Turkey and Caucasus regions was actually his father-in-law. And she also connects some dots to an Imam Gulen, who is a radical Muslim who has had to flee Turkey, basically with the assistance of the CIA, set up housekeeping in the United States, and has become a multi-billionaire and founded 350 radical madrasas around the world. And this is a fellow who has not set foot outside of the Virginia area since he was brought over here by the CIA. So when you start looking at some of this insider information, and you start looking at what Sibel Edmonds has learned as an FBI translator, you start to question even whether this is blowback, whether this terrorism is really a reaction to our ham-fisted foreign policy in so many different areas, or is this something that was designed to be a profit center for the military-industrial complex after the Cold War broke down? And she makes a very compelling case for it being by design and not a blowback. Let's take another call from Terry in Washington. Terry, are you there? Hello, Terry?
Yeah, Dave, do you hear me all right?
Yes, hear you fine. What's up?
Hey, you do a great job.
Thank you.
Hey, me, like everybody else in the world, the day of the Boston marathon, I think something was going on behind the scenes. Completely out of, nobody even was even thinking about it. That explosion at the fertilizer plant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was convenient timing, wasn't it? Happening there in Waco just the day before the anniversary of the Branch Davidian situation, and also using fertilizer, just like we were told is what happened at the Oklahoma City bombing. Although former retired general who was a demolitions expert, wasn't buying it at the time. And there's an excellent documentary about that, that Holland van Leeuwenhoek, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, wrote A Noble Lie. We sell that here at Infowars. You need to see that, about the Oklahoma City bombing, if you haven't seen that. It's an amazing story, and it takes a while for these stories to come out. We interviewed a documentarian who he spent 10 years going over the Waco story. It takes a very long time for all the facts to come out, but we can tell right away. When we start seeing contradictions and changing stories and things like bomb drills taking place at the same time there's a bomb, we know something's wrong, even though it'll take a while. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on The Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight.